essence, there's a certain feeling when you walk into a Time's office. And as soon as I walked in, I had that dreaded feeling. And there was an ME there with the body of my daughter in front of me.
On a seemingly ordinary afternoon in July 1984, 11-year-old Angela Marie Wong set off on a walk to the mall from her home in Massapequa, New York. But what should have been a routine trip turned into a chilling mystery when Angela vanished without a trace. The next day, police officers discovered her lifeless body, submerged in a stream with a log resting over her head. What led to Angela's disappearance and demise remained hidden for years, leaving everyone to wonder what truly happened to Angela and who was behind it all. Massapequa is a hamlet on Long Island, New York, which boasts a population of around 21,500 residents. Located within the town of Oyster Bay, it is known as the anchor of the greater Massapequa area, as it encompasses several surrounding communities. Massapequa offers residents a suburban feel with a range of restaurants, coffee shops, and parks. The community is known for its excellent schools and a strong sense of community. It's also close to the Great South Bay, providing opportunities for enjoying water-based activities and the stunning coastal views. According to FBI crime data, your chance of becoming a victim of crime in Massapequa is 1 in 85. It was here that our tragic story of Angela Marie Wong unfolded. Angela Marie Wong was born in Massapequa, New York in 1973. Her parents, Mary and Angela Wong, raised her in Nassau County, where she spent her early years. While details of her younger years are somewhat scarce, we do know that she had an older brother named Angelo Jr. Angela's father, Angelo Sr., finally described her as quite a girl. Life seemed carefree and happy for Angela. But as fate would have it, a tragic event would soon disrupt this peaceful chapter. On a warm Wednesday, July 17, 1984, 11-year-old Angela Wong spent her fun-filled afternoon hours with her brother and friends. Their hangout spot was the Wong family garage, where they practiced breakdancing. They were gearing up for a competition at the popular Stars Disco later that evening. Around 4:20 p.m., the practice session wrapped up and the group went their separate ways. Just 2 minutes later, Angela and her brother, Angelo Wong Jr., left their house together. He walked her a few houses down the street and then headed back home. Angela had informed him that she was on her way to meet friends at the nearby Sunrise Mall, and he was confident that this was where she was headed. Tragically, that was the last time anyone in Angela's family would see her alive. As the afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, a sense of unease began to settle over the Wong household. Angela, usually reliable and punctual, hadn't returned home within the expected time. The initial worry quickly transformed into frantic action as family members started searching the neighborhood, calling out Angela's name, hoping for a response. With each passing hour, hope dwindled and fear escalated. Realizing the severity of the situation, the Wongs contacted the Nassau County Police Department. The following hours unfolded in a blur of activity. Search parties scoured the area, retracing Angela's steps. Officers also joined in, combing through the neighborhood, retracing Angela's steps and questioning anyone who might have seen her. Despite all of this, Angela remained missing. On the second day of Angela's disappearance, July 18, 1984, the search continued. But this day also brought along a horrifying discovery. Around 12:30 p.m., police found a body in a creek, located in a wooded area behind a house at 27 Nancy Place in Massapequa. Sadly, The body was identified as Angela's. Angela was discovered drowned in the woods, not far from her own home. Her body showed signs of struggle, with bruises and scrapes on the right side of her face. It appeared as though a large log weighing at least 30 pounds had been used to hold her head underwater. Later, the medical examiner would officially confirm drowning as the cause of death, due to asphyxiation. It was also on this fateful day that Detective John Sharkey of the Nassau County Homicide Unit was assigned to investigate the 11-year-old's tragic death. In the wake of Angela's tragic death, her grief-stricken parents desperately yearned for answers and justice. They hoped to find clues by offering a reward. They began a poster campaign promising $5,000 for any information that could aid the investigation. Unfortunately, this initial attempt to gather clues proved fruitless. Detective Sharkey was also determined to find the truth. He interviewed various individuals, mainly young people between 11 and 15 years old. He also spoke with one adult. Each person believed they had seen Angela at either the Busy Bee Mall or Sunrise Mall on the afternoon of July 17th. However, Detective Sharkey was unable to verify any of these claims, leaving the investigation at a frustrating standstill. Just 1 month after losing Angela, with the pain still raw and present, Mary Wong, Angela's mother, felt compelled to take action. Seeking solace and connection, she found herself drawn to the Midtown Manhattan Library. There, amidst the shelves of books, Mary got to learn about a group known as Parents of Murdered Children. This organization, dedicated to offering support and understanding to families who had suffered similar tragedies, resonated deeply with Mary. Without hesitation, the Wongs embraced this newfound support system. They actively participated in both the local Long Island chapter and the national organization, finding strength in shared experiences of others who had walked this difficult path. Mary soon took the initiative to create a newsletter for the local chapter. This newsletter proved to be a powerful tool, not just for the local chapter, but for others across the nation. News of Mary's thoughtful creation spread like wildfire, and it inspired other chapters to follow her lead and establish their own newsletters. As the network grew, the original meeting spaces and homes became too small to accommodate the increasing number of participants. Seeking a larger space to cater to the growing community, the group secured an area at a mental health facility. These gatherings, especially during holidays, attracted as many as 200 people from diverse backgrounds who were all united by the shared experience of loss and a desire for healing. The movement garnered support from unexpected corners. Stan Goldberg, a cartoonist famous for his work on the Archie comics, even lent his artistic talents to the cause by designing a logo for the group. Goldberg and his wife, Pauline, also joined the Long Island chapter. They were not strangers to grief, as their daughter Heidi had been tragically murdered just a month before Angela. As the Long Island chapter flourished, attracting grieving families beyond the region's borders, the Wongs played an important role in establishing chapters in Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. They equipped others with methods not only to navigate the emotional complexities of grief, but also to remain proactive in their cases and keep them from going cold in the absence of immediate arrests. Now, Angela's father, Angelo Sr., was a former New York City police officer. He understood the urgency of pursuing leads firsthand. In the years following his daughter's death, he followed up on any information that came his way, leaving no stone unturned. The police, while aware of his emotional state, recognized his dedication and remained tolerant, even when his pursuit of leads led to late-night inquiries at people's doorsteps. Time slipped by, and promising leads turned cold. The Wongs found themselves making regular calls to the police, not to badger them, but to simply keep their daughter's case from gathering dust in the back of their minds. Each call served as a gentle reminder, a whisper of hope that something might finally bring answers. In 1998, after years of relentless searching in New York, the Wongs decided that a change of scenery might help. They packed their bags and headed south, settling in the quiet seaside community of Sable Point near Longwood, Florida. As Angela Wong explained, the city of New York had worn them out, and they needed a fresh start. This move allowed them to be closer to Mary Wong's family and focus on each other. While the frequency of their calls to the investigators did decrease, they never entirely stopped reaching out to them. The investigation into Angela's death soon landed in the hands of Detective Michael Kuhn. As he held her file for the first time, the weight of the unsolved case settled upon him. "Once I looked at the case, I became very interested in it," he recalled. Kuhn's first encounter with Angela's case was in 1997. That year, a glimmer of hope emerged when a tip arrived about the unsolved crime. Unfortunately, the lead turned cold, but it opened the door to Angela's file. From that moment, Detective Kuhn refused to let it close. He poured himself into the case, revisiting the details with a fresh perspective. He talked to Angela's friends and their parents back in their Massapequa neighborhood, meticulously building lists of individuals who could potentially hold some information. However, despite his tireless efforts, no new leads materialized. This left him with a growing sense of frustration. In March of 2002, the tireless efforts of Detective Kuhn and his team finally yielded a name: 33-year-old Manny Pacheco. Pacheco had come to the police's attention for unrelated charges. He had assaulted his girlfriend and their young daughter. During his arrest, a surprising revelation emerged. The girlfriend, under questioning from Detective Kuhn, disclosed a chilling detail. Pacheco had allegedly confessed to her that he, as a teenager, had taken Angela's life. This bombshell of a confession sent shockwaves through the investigation. It was a potential turning point, but could it be trusted? Detective Kuhn, ever cautious, knew there was still much work to be done. He needed to examine all details and gather additional evidence before moving forward. As Detective Kuhn dug deeper into the nearly 2-decade-old mystery, another piece of the puzzle fell into place. A childhood friend of Angela's, 29-year-old Nkiruka Okoye, came forward with a crucial detail. Okoye, who lived on the same block as Angela and was 13 when she vanished, revealed to Kuhn a memory from that fateful summer day. She recalled seeing Angela walking with Pacheco towards the wooded area near their homes. Pacheco, it turned out, was a childhood friend and neighbor of Angela. He was also part of the group of friends Angela had been spending time with in her parents' garage before her disappearance. This gave the authorities the final piece of information they needed. On March 21, 2002, after the long, agonizing, and grueling wait of 17 years, 8 months, and 5 days since Angela's tragic passing, Nassau County detectives finally reached out to Angela's parents and informed them that they had arrested Pacheco. "Without a doubt, it was the best day of my life," said Angela Wong. "It was an awesome feeling. I never gave up hope. I knew it was just a matter of time." Following Pacheco's arrest in Los Angeles sometime in late March 2002, detectives Michael Kuhn and Brian Parpin of the Nassau County Homicide Squad brought him in for questioning. During this interview, Pacheco disclosed that he worked as a personal trainer and used steroids regularly. Pacheco further claimed to be involved as a trainer in Hollywood fight scenes for movies like Lethal Weapon. Shockingly, Pacheco also admitted to finding the 11-year-old victim, Angela, sexy during those days. But perhaps the most shocking revelation was yet to come. 3 years after Angela's tragic death, a series of events unfolded. Pacheco fathered a son, named Manuel Pacheco Jr., with a woman who would later become the wife of Angela's brother, Angela Wong Jr. This child, known as Manny, had been raised by the Wong family ever since. This unforeseen twist added another layer of complexity and emotional weight to the already heartbreaking case. Since Pacheco had been only 15 years old at the time of Angela's murder, the authorities determined he would be tried under the jurisdiction of juvenile law. This significantly impacted the potential penalties that he could face. Under juvenile law, the maximum sentence he could receive ranged from 9 years to life imprisonment. This was a stark contrast to the harsher sentence of 25 years to life in prison that an adult perpetrator would have faced for the same crime. The date of the trial finally arrived, February 2, 2004, nearly 2 decades after the tragedy. It brought together the Wong and Pacheco families, formerly neighbors, now forever tied by a single devastating event. The weight of the years hung heavy in the courtroom as the proceedings began. One of the prosecution's first witnesses was Angela's mother. Taking the stand, she tearfully recounted her daughter's fear of entering wooded areas alone. This testimony aimed to establish that Angela wouldn't have willingly ventured into the woods. Pacheco's defense attorney, Thomas Leotti, countered this by arguing the absence of any physical evidence directly linking his client to the crime that occurred years ago. The case against Pacheco took a critical turn on February 6th. A former acquaintance named Margaret Mazza stepped forward during the trial. Mazza, who was then 36 years old, testified in the courtroom that Pacheco had confessed the crime to her back in 1985. According to Mazza, Pacheco admitted to killing Angela because she had resisted his advances when he tried to take advantage of her. This testimony was considered highly damaging to Pacheco's defense. 3 days later, February 9, 2004, 2 more women came forward. These women, both former girlfriends of Pacheco, also testified in court. They echoed Mazza's claims, stating that Pacheco had also confessed the murder of Angela to them. These additional testimonies further strengthened the prosecution's case against Pacheco. On February 27, 2004, the jury reached a decision. After careful deliberation, they found Pacheco guilty of murder. The jury concluded that Pacheco had acted with intention when he drowned Angela, using a log to pin her head underwater. Following the verdict announcement, several jurors spoke out, highlighting the confessions Pacheco made to these 3 women as the most convincing pieces of evidence presented throughout the trial. These confessions, they explained, ultimately convinced them of his guilt in Angela's death. Pacheco's sentence for taking Angela's life was determined. He was sentenced to spend a minimum of 9 years with the possibility of remaining in prison for the rest of his life. As years passed, Manuel Manny Pacheco was granted parole in September 2022 after 18 years in prison. Few online petitions argued that Manny was wrongly convicted and should be released. At the same time, few other petitions opposed his release. The sentence, though, had brought a sense of closure to many involved in the case, particularly Angela's family and loved ones. While the outcome could never truly replace their loss, it offered a measure of justice after years of waiting and uncertainty.
At 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang over and over and over and over. So I go to the door, and Chuck's standing there. And the look on his face was something I had never seen before. And I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "It's Cheryl. She's dead." And I said, "What?" He says, "She's dead. Somebody killed her."
On December 25, 1980, a grim discovery was made in a Fort Worth home in Aurora, Illinois. Cheryl Lynn Hall, just 21 years old, was found lifeless by her husband, Nicholas Chuck Hall. The scene was heartbreaking. Cheryl, unclothed and bloodied, lay by their Christmas tree, a cord wrapped tightly around her neck indicating she had been strangled. Chuck immediately called the police to the grim scene. As the investigation unfolded, the mystery deepened, leaving many questions unanswered. Who could have committed such a heinous act? And what led to the tragic end of Cheryl Lynn Springfield? Aurora, Illinois, with a population of 180,542, is the second most populous city in the state, known for its rich history and vibrant community. This diverse city, part of the Chicago metropolitan area, thrives on its manufacturing past while embracing a future filled with arts, culture, and recreational activities. With its historic downtown along the Fox River, Aurora offers a blend of architectural marvels and scenic beauty. Despite its inviting environment, Aurora, like any city, faces challenges, including crime, although lower than 74% of America's communities. In 2020, the city worked toward safety and community engagement. Amidst its complexities, the cold case of Cheryl Lynn Hall remains a somber note in Aurora's narrative, reflecting the city's ongoing journey towards resolution and peace. Cheryl Lynn, born on June 22, 1961 in Aurora, Kane County, Illinois, was the first child of her family. Her mother, Garnet Bailey, often shared heartwarming tales of Cheryl's childhood, affectionately calling her Cherry from her earliest days. The bond between them was unmistakable. Cheryl was a mama's girl through and through, hardly ever wanting to be apart from her mother. Garnet still fondly remembers the dress Cheryl wore on her first day of school, a symbol of innocence and the beginning of many firsts, and how Cheryl, reluctant to leave her mother's side, cried, not wanting to be separated.
Cheryl was my daughter, my firstborn. I called her Sherry from the time she was born. She was always a mama's girl. She wanted to be with me all the time. I will never forget the dress she had on her first day of school. She looked adorable. And then when I left her, she started crying. She wanted to come back with me. She was just perfect. She made me proud to be a mom.
Cheryl wasn't just a cherished daughter, she was also an incredible sister. Despite the 4-year age gap between her and Lisa, her younger sister, they shared an inseparable bond. From playing Barbies to just being there for each other, Cheryl embodied the role of the protective and caring older sister. Lisa recalls their closeness, emphasizing how Cheryl's kindness knew no bounds. She was the epitome of sweetness without a single mean streak.
We were about 4 years apart. We always got along, even though there was a big age gap. She would play Barbies with me. We were really close. She was so sweet. I don't really think there was a mean bone in her body.
Cheryl's journey into adulthood was marked by a significant milestone when she met Chuck through a mutual friend. Their connection was instant and profound, signaling the beginning of a deep and enduring love. Chuck was different from anyone Cheryl had ever dated. He was her first true love, the one with whom she envisioned a future filled with joy and companionship. Their relationship quickly blossomed, leading to their marriage on October 6, 1979. Just weeks after Cheryl graduated from high school. The wedding was a celebration of their love, with Cheryl radiating happiness, looking every bit the princess in her gown. Their favorite photo from the wedding captures a moment of hopeful anticipation for the life they planned to build together. Setting into their new life, Cheryl and Chuck moved into a townhome in a quiet neighborhood of Aurora. Surrounded by family and friends, they created a warm and inviting home, often hosting gatherings where music by the Eagles filled the air, reflecting Cheryl's tastes and the joyous moments they shared. Their home was more than just a living space. It was a hub of love, laughter, and dreams for the future. Cheryl's aspirations for family life were always clear. She longed for a simple yet fulfilling existence centered around marriage, a home of her own, and children. The neighborhood they chose seemed ideal for this dream, embodying safety and community spirit, where children played freely and neighbors lived in harmony. In the days leading up to the tragedy, Cheryl, Lisa, and Garnet shared what would become their final shopping trip together. It was an ordinary day, filled with the joy of finding new clothes for Cheryl's job, a moment of happiness and anticipation for what was to come. Little did they know, this moment of togetherness would soon be remembered as their last. The sudden loss of Cheryl left a void in their lives, transforming their trio into a duo, forever altered by the absence of their beloved Cheryl. September 9th, 1981 was a typical Wednesday for Cheryl, who had the day off from work. Wednesdays for her were reserved for household chores, cleaning, doing laundry, and prepping meals for the upcoming week. This routine was well known among her friends and family, making her presence at home on this day a given. Chuck, her husband, maintained his daily routine of returning home for lunch, cherishing these midday moments with Cheryl before heading back to work. However, that evening, upon Chuck's return around 6 p.m., the usual warmth and welcome were conspicuously absent. The unsettling silence was broken only by the sight of disarray near the front door, a clear sign that something was amiss. With a growing sense of dread, Chuck called out for Cheryl as he ascended the stairs, only to find a scene that would haunt him forever. Cheryl was there, lifeless, an iron cord tragically wrapped around her neck, dangling from the doorknob. In a desperate attempt to revive her, Chuck performed CPR before rushing to seek help from a neighbor, a nurse who immediately called for emergency services. Despite their efforts, it was too late. The devastating news of Cheryl's death was delivered by a visibly shaken Chuck to Garnet, Cheryl's mother, and Lisa, her sister. The shock and disbelief that followed were profound, a family shattered by the unimaginable loss. The police and paramedics arrived at the scene around 6:25 p.m., confirming the worst fears of all involved.
After the call is received, the officers and medics arrive on scene. They check the upstairs bedroom and locate Cheryl Hull. It looked to be a very murder. The cord was still wrapped around her neck. The other portion of the cord was wrapped around the doorknob.
There appeared to be strangulation marks around Cheryl Lynn's neck. Her husband was visibly and emotionally distraught.
Chuck was one of the last ones to see Cheryl alive, so he was one that we wanted to speak to.
Just an hour and a half after Cheryl Lynn's body was discovered on that fateful Wednesday, September 9th, 1981, the police launched their investigation into her tragic death. The focus quickly turned to Chuck, Cheryl's husband, who found himself at the Aurora Police Headquarters facing questions. In these early stages, law enforcement often looks to those closest to the victim, and Chuck, being both the spouse and the last person to see Cheryl alive, was scrutinized under this lens. Investigators approached this delicate situation with compassion, understanding the profound grief Chuck was experiencing. Yet they had to fulfill their duty to uncover the truth. The reality is, in the wake of such a crime, family members often find themselves under a cloud of suspicion. It's a harsh aspect of law enforcement investigations, where until someone is charged, suspicions linger, casting a shadow over the grieving process. Chuck, caught in this storm, not only had to grapple with the loss of Cheryl, but also with the scrutiny of being the prime suspect. His love for Cheryl made the accusation even more unbearable. Chuck endured countless hours of questioning and review of his story by the police. This exhaustive process took a toll on him, leading to frustration and anger towards the investigation team. Despite this, the police diligently verified Chuck's alibi, confirming his presence at work during the critical hours of 2:30 to 6 p.m., ultimately ruling him out as a suspect.
It never crossed my mind that Chuck ever hurt her. Never crossed my mind. Even, though they interviewed him for a long time, I never suspected that Chuck ever hurt her.
I had people ask me, "What do you think?" And without a doubt, I knew that Chuck had nothing to do with it. He loved her. He would never have hurt her.
We checked into his whereabouts between 2:30 and 6 p.m. and confirmed that he was seen on job sites.
With Chuck cleared, investigators turned their attention to the crime scene, searching for any clues that could lead them to the perpetrator. They examined door handles, Cheryl's purse, and other collected items for latent fingerprints. But many were smeared or overlaid, offering no clear leads. The collection of hairs, fibers, and trace evidence hinted at a violent struggle, with Cheryl's injuries indicating she fought fiercely against her attacker. A notable discovery was a bloodstain under one of her fingernails, suggesting she may have left her mark on her assailant. The nature of the murder weapon, a readily available iron cord, underscored the extent of the attack. The investigation also invoked speaking with those close to Cheryl, piecing together her last known movements. Conversations with her sister revealed a last phone call around 3 p.m. the day of the murder. Neighbors reported hearing a door slam and loud thuds in the vicinity of Cheryl's apartment shortly after, suggesting a timeline of events up to Chuck discovering her body at 6 p.m.
Her sister said that she last spoke with Cheryl at 3 p.m. that day on the phone, and then at 3:30, neighbors of the adjacent apartment heard a door slam, and then they heard several loud thuds, and then at 6 p.m. is when Chuck gets home and finds her. So the timeline was basically 3 p.m. to 6 that we were looking at.
This timeline pointed to a narrow window in which the crime could have occurred, intensifying the mystery of who could have committed such a violent act in what seemed like a safe and tight-knit community. The randomness and nature of the attack left the community in fear, worried that such a crime could happen again. The investigation continued, with detectives combing through every piece of evidence and every lead, hoping to bring justice for Cheryl and peace to a community shaken by her loss. Amidst the investigation, Cheryl's family and friends were left to deal with their grief. Preparing for her funeral, they sought to find a special outfit that would both honor her memory and cover the marks of her tragic end. The task of choosing a burial outfit, particularly a light blue turtleneck, fell to her 16-year-old sister, a heartbreaking responsibility for someone so young.
We needed to get something special for her to be buried in. It had to be something that covered her neck. So I went to the mall and I found a really pretty light blue turtleneck for her to wear. I was only 16, and that was a hard thing to do.
I remember seeing her laying there. Never in a million years would I have ever dreamed I would be looking at her like that. And I made it through somehow. I don't even know how I made it. I held her hand and just told her how much I loved her and how much I miss her.
The funeral itself was a profound moment of sorrow, with loved ones grappling with the reality of saying goodbye. Chuck's anguish was palpable, his inability to leave Cheryl's side at the casket a testament to his deep love and the profound loss that he felt. As the investigation progressed, the focus remained on understanding the sequence of events that led to Cheryl's murder. The efforts to identify a suspect continued, with the community and Cheryl's family clinging to the hope that justice would eventually be served. In the wake of Cheryl Lynn Hall's tragic murder, detectives embarked on a meticulous investigation, exploring every possible lead that could unravel the mystery of her death. Among the avenues explored was a potential connection between Cheryl's murder and a series of burglaries in the neighborhood. The theory initially considered was whether Cheryl had unexpectedly encountered a burglar in her home. This line of inquiry, however, quickly reached a dead end, as investigators noted that the newly installed deadbolt on Cheryl's door was intact, and there was no sign of disturbance within her apartment, nor any valuable items missing. It became evident that Cheryl's murder was not a burglary gone wrong, but a crime of a far more personal nature. Murder by strangulation, as seen in Cheryl's case, is often driven by high emotions, indicating that the perpetrator was likely someone Cheryl knew or trusted enough to allow into her home. Attention soon shifted to Larry Galloway, a colleague of Chuck's at the cable company and a former high school acquaintance of Cheryl's. Galloway had visited Cheryl's home a couple of weeks before her murder, a visit that Cheryl herself found unsettling, enough to mention to a friend. Despite this, Galloway provided an alibi for the time of Cheryl's murder, claiming he was at his parents' home. His visit to Cheryl, he explained, was related to union business with Chuck. Investigators looked into Galloway's past interactions with Chuck, particularly in the context of Chuck's role as a union steward, and a prior instance where Chuck was unable to save Galloway's job. Despite the suspicions and Galloway's refusal to take a polygraph test, law enforcement was unable to gather sufficient evidence to link him to Cheryl's murder conclusively. As the investigation progressed, detectives also examined the possibility of a connection between Cheryl's murder and another violent crime that occurred 9 months earlier, the murder of Susan Jabczynski, not far from Aurora. The similarities between the two cases, both victims were young women who died violently under similar circumstances, raised fears of a serial offender in the community. However, despite these parallels, law enforcement was unable to establish a definitive link between the two murders. The investigation faced further complications as leads dried up and cooperation from potential suspects waned. The refusal of Larry Galloway to undergo a polygraph test, while not an admission of guilt, marked yet another dead end for detectives. The exhaustive efforts to solve Cheryl's murder involved interviewing everyone from bank employees to neighbors and friends, yet each lead only seemed to deepen the mystery. Amidst the ongoing investigation, the impact on Cheryl's family and particularly on Chuck was profound. Accusations and suspicions, although eventually cleared, took a significant emotional toll on him, The promise he made to Cheryl's family to protect her weighed heavily on him, and her loss left him questioning his identity without her. The community's speculation and the lingering cloud of suspicion only added to his anguish. As time passed, the investigation into Cheryl Lynn Hall's murder hit a wall. With no new suspects to pursue, and key individuals like Larry Galloway ceasing cooperation, the case gradually went cold, leaving more questions than answers.
There was one officer that actually told my brother, unless somebody comes in, we will probably never know who did this. That was very hard for my brother to hear.
The first anniversary after she was taken from us, it was really hard. So many emotions. Sad, anger that, this person is out there just living their life. Her life was taken away.
There was very little investigative activity, and I can imagine that was incredibly painful for the Hall family and for the community.
There began to be doubt that this case was going to be solved. But I felt connected to the family, and every time I saw them, I just saw their pain fresh again, and their frustration, and their unwillingness to give up. Garnett and her family, they never let the police department forget Cheryl Lynn's name. They were like, please, don't forget Cheryl Lynn. We know her murder can be solved.
Driven by a relentless pursuit of justice for Cheryl Lynn Hall, her family's determination never wavered. Monthly visits to the police station became a routine, each time hoping for progress, yet each visit ended in disappointment. Cheryl's mother, fueled by a mix of grief and determination, confronted Larry Galloway in a phone call that ended with his defiant response, further fueling the family's suspicions and heartache. Years passed with no breakthrough, until the family sought the help of Denise Crosby, a columnist with a wide reach. Denise's coverage brought the cold case back into the public eye, reigniting interest and prompting the police to re-examine the evidence with fresh eyes.
I have been a columnist for the Tribune newspapers for close to 3 decades. That phone call came in from the family saying, hey, we want to talk to you about our daughter's case. Her death left such a hole in the fabric of that family.
We felt like we were kind of backed into a corner until we met Denise, and she just took it from there. She was our voice.
The renewed investigation in 1997, bolstered by advances in DNA technology, once again pointed towards Larry Galloway. Witnesses were re-interviewed, some discrediting Galloway's alibi and attesting to his capacity for violence, thereby intensifying suspicions against him. The pivotal moment came when investigators sought Galloway's DNA to compare with the evidence collected from the crime scene, particularly the suspected bloodstain under Cheryl's fingernails. However, Galloway's refusal to cooperate and provide a DNA sample, coupled with a judge's ruling that there was insufficient evidence to compel him, left the investigation at a standstill. This legal dead end crushed the family's hopes once more, leaving them to grapple with the painful reality that without this crucial piece of evidence, the case could not move forward, and eventually, it went cold again. The long, painful journey of Cheryl Lynn Hall's family, filled with grief and a relentless quest for justice, reached a critical juncture, 26 years after her tragic murder. The enduring pain and unresolved anguish had taken a profound toll on Chuck, Cheryl's husband, who was plagued by PTSD and haunted by memories and suspicions. Despite remarrying and fathering 2 sons, Chuck's life was overshadowed by the unresolved crime, leading to further personal turmoil and eventual separation from his second wife. His visits to Cheryl's grave were a testament to the unresolved grief that continued to shape his life. A breakthrough finally arrived when a new detective with a decade of law enforcement experience took over the cold case. With a fresh perspective, the detective's review pointed unmistakably towards Larry Galloway, reigniting the determination to see justice served. Advances in DNA technology offered a new avenue to conclusively link the suspect to the crime, but obtaining Galloway's DNA presented a significant challenge. In a strategic move reminiscent of detective thrillers, law enforcement officials conducted a meticulous surveillance operation on Galloway. After tracking him to a Chili's restaurant, they collected discarded utensils, a straw, and a napkin he had used, turning these everyday items into crucial pieces of evidence. This innovative approach to evidence collection was a game changer. The DNA analysis of the items Galloway left behind matched the bloodstain found under Cheryl's fingernails, providing the conclusive evidence needed to solidify his connection to the murder. This pivotal discovery was the breakthrough the investigation needed, fulfilling the family's long-held hope for answers and justice. Following the DNA match, authorities were granted an arrest warrant for Larry Galloway, leading to his arrest on July 31, 2008, 21 years after Cheryl's murder.
We knew that he was a train conductor in Chicago. So my partner and I went down to the Ogilvie train station. We walked up to Larry Galloway and I advised him that he was under arrest. Larry had no emotional reaction, didn't ask any questions. I told him the warrant was for murder, and he put his hands behind his back and was very compliant. There was no surprise. It was almost as if he knew this day was coming.
12:30 at night, the doorbell rang. And when I got to it, I saw the detectives with these huge smiles on their faces. And they said, "We got him." I could not believe it. I said, "Finally."
I was so happy. I thought, okay, now maybe he's going to pay for what he did.
That was the first time I had seen the light in my brother's eyes. And I got to witness him with Lisa and Garnet, and they were just hugging each other, and they're like, "We did it. We finally did it."
It was a good feeling to put handcuffs on him, but I knew that the job was far from over.
DNA is an important piece of evidence in criminal cases, but it's one piece of a puzzle. Oftentimes there is more to the story that needs to be told to really sustain our burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Just because you arrest somebody doesn't mean that it's going to be a successful conviction.
Just hours after his arrest, Galloway was interviewed by police.
If it was me, I'd say this has been on my conscience a long time and I need to get it off my chest. Doesn't bother you? It hasn't been bothering you, man? There is absolutely no doubt that you were there when this occurred. No doubt. We just want to know. We just want to know why. Okay, that's all we want to know, is why this happened.
Why can't you answer it?
Why can't you answer me on that?
Because I didn't do anything.
You didn't do anything?
Done a lot of stuff.
When you say nothing like that, and you've done a lot of stuff, what are you talking about?
Oh, you know.
Galloway's demeanor during questioning, devoid of any remorse, convinced detectives they had apprehended the correct individual. Despite his reputation as a respected train conductor, Galloway's arrest sent shockwaves through his community, challenging the image many had of him. Faced with the prospect of trial, prosecutors recognized the challenges ahead. Notably, the small volume of DNA evidence available and the loss of key personnel who had collected critical evidence. To avoid the risk of acquittal, a plea deal was struck, ensuring Galloway would be held accountable to some degree for Cheryl's murder. The decision to accept the plea deal was driven by the family's desire for some form of justice over the gamble of a jury trial. Galloway's guilty plea to voluntary manslaughter brought mixed emotions to Cheryl's family. While it provided a sense of closure, it left lingering questions about the motive behind Cheryl's murder. Theories ranged from professional resentment to personal obsession. But without Galloway's confession to the motive, the family was left without the full understanding that they longed for. The sentence handed down to Galloway was a 10-year prison term, of which he was expected to serve only half due to the laws at the time. His early release, however, due to good behavior and a program aimed at reducing prison overcrowding, was a bitter pill for Cheryl's family, especially as it coincided with the holiday season, underscoring the profound loss and injustice they felt. The release of Larry Galloway without the input or notification of Cheryl Lynn Hall's family or the prosecutor's office was a profound blow, leaving a sense of injustice lingering in the air. This decision, hard to accept for everyone involved, underscored the deep pain and unresolved grief that Cheryl's family continued to bear. The sense of justice for Cheryl felt diminished, with the family's path to healing obstructed by their overwhelming sorrow. In the months following Galloway's release, Cheryl's family faced yet another devastating loss. Chuck Hall, Cheryl's widower, passed away after a long battle with cancer. Despite the years of suspicion and turmoil, Chuck's final days were marked by a semblance of peace, knowing that his name had been cleared, and that the world recognized his innocence in Cheryl's tragic death. This knowledge brought a measure of comfort to him and his family, offering a poignant closure to a chapter marked by loss, injustice, and the relentless pursuit of truth. So what are your thoughts on the resolution of Cheryl Lynn Hall's cold case? Do you think justice was fully served?
I really would like to say that the investigation that went into all of this work was probably the hardest genealogy task that I've ever faced in over 10 years, as long as I've been doing genealogy. I would dare to say that this was probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. And it means so much to me that I was able to be on the team that could provide answers for the Chiverella family, and to, of course, help out the state police to close this investigation.
On the morning of March 18, 1964, 9-year-old Marise Ann Chiverella embarked on her usual 10-minute journey to St. Joseph's Parochial School in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. Tragically, she never arrived at her destination. At approximately 1 p.m. that same day, while a man was teaching his teenage nephew to drive near an abandoned strip mine turned garbage dump, they came across what they initially mistook for a large doll atop the refuse. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be Marise's lifeless body. She had been subjected to physical assault and murdered. Immediate investigations were launched by the Pennsylvania State Police Department. Yet it would take decades for the full truth surrounding her tragic demise to emerge. Who could have committed such a heinous act against an innocent child? What secrets did the investigation uncover? And why did it take so long to bring the truth to light? Hazleton is a city located in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania. It boasts of a population of more than 29,000 people as of the 2020 census. It was once a booming coal town, but it later bloomed with the elegance of silk production. Today, Hazleton offers a vibrant art scene with festivals, theater, and galleries showcasing local talent. Outdoor enthusiasts can visit the state game lands for a stroll, or visit the local lakes for boating, fishing, and swimming. According to statistics, Hazleton has an overall crime rate of 11 per 1,000 residents, making the crime rate there near the average for all cities and towns of all sizes in America. It was here that the tragic story of Marise Ann Chiverella unfolded. Marise Ann Chiverella was born on November 25, 1954, in the heart of Hazleton, Pennsylvania. Her arrival brought great joy to her parents, Carmen and Mary Chiverella. Marise wasn't the only one to fill their lives with laughter. She had 4 older siblings: Ronald, Barry, David, and Carmen. Those closest to Marise remember her as a gentle soul with a quiet sweetness about her. While some kids dreamt of becoming astronauts or movie stars, Marise held a unique aspiration. She longed to wear the habit of a nun. Despite her quiet nature, music filled her heart. She enjoyed playing the organ. She and I used to tease each other, but we had a special relationship between us, said Marisa's older brother Ronald.
Very loving, had a great sense of humor. As youngsters, we would tease her, she would tease us.
Life flowed smoothly, filled with laughter and the warmth of family, until a sudden darkness descended, leaving the Chiverella family all reeling from an unimaginable tragedy. At 8 a.m. on March 18, 1964, Marise skipped down the sidewalk on her way to school. It was just a short 10-minute walk to St. Joseph's Parochial School, where she was a bright and eager 3rd grader. Normally, her brother and sister walked with her, but today was different. Today, an extra spring was in Marisa's step. She carried a special gift, a collection of canned goods, tucked tightly under her arm. Before joining the morning mass, she wanted to personally hand them over to her teacher, who was a nun. This was a gesture of appreciation from a student who cherished her teacher. Little did anyone know, the half-mile walk that stretched before her would unfold differently. Somewhere along the familiar path, Marise vanished, leaving behind only an unsettling silence and a trail of unanswered questions. The sun rose higher, but Marisa's seat in school remained empty. She never came home for lunch, something she always did. Panic started to build in the Chiverella family. They called everyone, retraced her steps, but they found nothing. The usual warmth of their small town felt cold and scary. Where was Marise? As the afternoon wore on, a sliver of hope remained. Perhaps Marise had gotten lost or delayed. But around 1 p.m., that fragile hope shattered. It was on that very day, near an abandoned strip mine turned garbage dump, that a chilling discovery unfolded. A man teaching his nephew to drive spotted what they initially thought was a discarded doll amidst the refuse. As they drew closer, the horrifying truth emerged. It was Marise. Her small body lay lifeless, hands bound by one of her own shoelaces, her ankles tied with the other. The evidence of a heinous crime was etched upon her. Her clothes, which included a jacket, were undisturbed, but the light in her eyes was gone. Scattered around her were remnants of her day, her suede shoes, the school bag she carried, and even the pocketbook she used. The canned goods, meant as an offering to her teacher, now lay alongside her. Marisa's body was soon taken out of the area for an autopsy. The news of Marise's passing shattered the once peaceful haven of the Chiverella family. Despair hung heavy in the air, suffocating every corner of the house. Ronald, Marise's brother, described the scene as pure chaos. People clung to each other, seeking solace in a shared pain too heavy to bear alone. His mother, overwhelmed by the enormity of the loss, retreated into a shell of shock and required sedatives to numb the unbearable reality. His father seemed reduced to a hollow shell, a mere ghost of his former self. The tragedy of Marise's death sparked an immediate investigation. The Pennsylvania State Police, determined to find answers, delved into every corner of the case. Among the suspects were a priest with a murky past in another state, and a local exhibitionist who took his own life under the weight of suspicion. But despite the tireless efforts of over 250 officers across decades, the investigation yielded no arrests. The case file grew thick with information, spanning over 4,700 pages. Yet the crucial piece of the puzzle remained elusive. With every passing year, the case grew colder. Yet hope refused to be extinguished. Marise's family and the community held on to it, their yearning for justice, a silent promise that one day the truth would come to light. In 2007, a glimmer of hope emerged from the darkness. Advances in technology allowed the state's DNA lab to extract a profile from fluids found on Marise's jacket. There was excitement in the air. Could this be the breakthrough they had been waiting for? Well, as it turned out, the initial search through the DNA database yielded no matches, leaving investigators once again grappling with disappointment. Nonetheless, they refused to give up. They continued to compare the profile against the database every month. A new chapter unfolded in 2018 with the rise of genetic genealogy, a method that had at the time gained widespread attention with the capture of the infamous Golden State Killer. Recognizing its potential, Pennsylvania investigators joined forces with Parabon Nanolabs, a cutting-edge DNA analysis company. Armed with the suspect's DNA profile, the Parabon team created a snapshot DNA phenotype, a detailed report predicting the killer's ancestry, physical characteristics like eye and hair color, and even personality traits.
We submitted a DNA profile sample of the killer of Marise Chiverella to a company called Parabon. Parabon can create what they call a DNA phenotype, which is the result on our board over here, basically a facial product of your DNA profile. They base this off of DNA profiles that are known as to what their facial features are against our profile, which is unknown.
But the hunt wouldn't end there. Parabon uploaded the profile to GEDmatch, a website where individuals upload their DNA to find relatives. This was a gamble, as the suspect may not have been on the site himself. The gamble paid off. They found a match, a distant relative, possibly a sixth cousin. This single connection, seemingly insignificant, was the spark that ignited the long-dormant investigation. Now, they had a starting point, a thread to unravel the tangled web of the killer's family history. In 2020, a fresh pair of eyes joined the investigation in the form of 18-year-old college student Eric Schubert. Unlike seasoned detectives, Eric wasn't equipped with years of experience, but he had something equally valuable: a passion for genealogy. This wasn't just a hobby for him. It was a way to connect the dots, to trace the threads of family history, and uncover hidden stories. He had already volunteered his skills to help law enforcement in other cases, and now he was determined to unravel the mystery of Marise's death. When Eric read about the police's efforts to find Marise's killer in a local newspaper, he knew he had to help. He reached out to the investigators, offering his unique skill set. Before officially joining the team, however, he had to undergo a vetting process. Investigators arranged a meeting at a campus coffee shop, unsure what to expect from this young college student. To their surprise, Eric walked in prepared. The lead investigator, Mark Barron, recalled that Eric came in like it was a job interview, with a portfolio showcasing his past work, and an eagerness that was impossible to ignore. This impromptu audition cemented their decision. They had found not just a helping hand, but a potential game-changer in their pursuit of justice for Marise. Armed with the distant relative identified by Parabon, Eric dove headfirst into the digital archives. He combed through census records, birth certificates, and obituaries, meticulously reconstructing the branches of this extended family tree. Soon, names began to emerge, potential suspects scattered across the vast expanse of the country. Armed with these leads, authorities embarked on a nationwide manhunt. Countless interviews were conducted, stories shared, and memories dredged up. DNA samples were collected and compared. Each negative result, a setback met with renewed determination. They knew they couldn't let her case become another cold statistic, another unsolved mystery haunting the community. Every step, every interview, every DNA comparison was a brick laid on the path to justice. For 18 months, Eric threw himself into the case, dedicating a staggering 20 hours a week outside of his college schedule to chasing every lead and sifting through countless details. His tireless efforts finally bore fruit when he zeroed in on a local bartender named James Forte. While Forte had a criminal record, he had never been considered a suspect in Marise's case. A closer look at Forte's past revealed a disturbing pattern. In 1974, he was arrested in Hazleton for charges as horrific as Marise's ordeal: assault and aggravated assault. 4 years later, he found himself in trouble again, facing charges of reckless endangerment and harassment. These arrests painted a chilling portrait of a man capable of unimaginable acts. Even more unsettling, Forte lived a mere 6 or 7 blocks away from the Chiverella family at the time of the murder. This realization sent shivers down their spines. However, they also found that Forte had passed away in 1980, at the age of 38. But now, the truth, long buried, wouldn't stay hidden any longer. The evidence gathered by Eric and the investigators, coupled with compelling arguments, convinced a judge to approve the exhumation of Forte's body in January of 2022. And on February 3, 2022, DNA testing confirmed a positive match between a sample taken from Marise's clothing and Forte's DNA. This revelation brought a wave of emotions: relief, anger, and a bittersweet sense of closure for Marise's family. Though Forte, then 22, had no known connection to Marise or her family, the truth, buried for over 50 years, had now finally been unearthed. A press conference was later held on February 10, 2022. Police officers, some of whom had carried out the investigation for decades, stood beside the Chiverella family. Eric had to skip 3 classes to be in attendance as officials announced that the case was closed.
We're always told not to get attached to a case, but you can't help it.
Detectives never gave up. A family which waited almost 58 years never gave up.
Justice has been served today.
The 4 siblings of Marise Chiverella have closure. They now know who murdered their 9-year-old sister in 1964. The cold case has been cracked.
This was probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life.
Closure, however, wasn't without its bittersweet sting. It marked the end of a decades-long wait, a journey etched with grief and unanswered questions. Marise's siblings, including Carmen Marie Radke, expressed their heartfelt gratitude to the investigators. Their journey, they said, wasn't driven by a desire for punishment or revenge, but by a yearning for truth and justice. Now it's time to move forward while still feeling the emptiness and sorrow of Marise's absence, Carmen said. Yet amidst the grief, a flicker of hope remained. Justice had been served, thanks to the dedication of the investigators and the young Eric Schubert. Marise's story, though tragically cut short, became a symbol of hope and the pursuit of truth, even in the face of decades-long darkness.
Kamiyah Mobley was just hours old when she was taken from the nursing ward at University Medical Center back in 1998.
As for the child's mother, she is still in shock over the crime.
She shouldn't have never left my arms from the beginning.
On July 10, 1998, in Jacksonville, Florida, 16-year-old Kamiyah Mobley experienced what should have been one of the happiest days of her life. She had just given birth to a beautiful daughter, surrounded by the love and support of her family, community, and church. Everything was set for her baby girl's homecoming. But joy turned to despair in less than 9 hours, when her daughter was mysteriously taken from the hospital, vanishing without a trace. How did this happen? And where could a newborn be possibly taken overnight? Jacksonville, Florida, with a population of about 971,319 as of 2020, is the most populous city in the state and known for its expansive size, making it the largest city by area in the contiguous United States. This vibrant city, perched on the Atlantic coast, is renowned for its rich history, bustling port, and a mix of recreational and historic places that shape its residents' lifestyles. Jacksonville's community is diverse, contributing to a dynamic cultural scene that includes numerous parks, museums, and beaches, offering a blend of leisure and historical exploration. However, it's also important to note the city's crime rate, which is 17% higher than the national average. It presents challenges. Amidst this backdrop, the Kamiyah Mobley case unfolded, a notable event in the city's recent history.
Please marry my baby. I know you. If you don't have no kids, if you was faking a pregnancy or, you just can't have no kids. How you think I feel? I'm older, true enough. I'm only 16 years old, but I have feelings, so that's my first child.
A day that was supposed to be filled with joy and new beginnings, July 10th, 1998. Instead, it became a date etched in sorrow for Kamiyah Mobley. Just a teenager herself at 16, she welcomed her daughter Kamiyah into the world at University Medical Center in Jacksonville, Florida, at the break of dawn, about 6:55 a.m. This day, however, took a tragic turn just 8 hours after the birth. A nurse who had been closely interacting with Kamiyah and Kamiyah, offering assistance and engaging in conversations, suddenly became part of a nightmare scenario. The nurse who had been there under the guise of helping had built a sense of trust with Kamiyah, even assisting her to walk and change into a new gown. Later in the afternoon, with Kamiyah exhausted and vulnerable, the nurse suggested putting Kamiyah in her baby carrier, claiming she needed to take the baby for a routine temperature check. It seemed normal, Nothing out of the ordinary. Especially when Kamiyah's grandmother entered the room and was briefly introduced to the little one, before the nurse took her away, promising a quick return. But as minutes turned to 20 minutes and Kamiyah wasn't brought back, panic set in. Shanera, overwhelmed with a sense of dread, began a desperate search through the hospital corridors, a heartbreaking sense of a mother's fear escalating into absolute terror. The hospital, alerted to the unthinkable reality of an abduction, immediately contacted the police, setting in motion an exhaustive search operation. Surveillance footage would later reveal a woman, thought to be just another family member by the hospital staff, walking away with Kamiyah, unnoticed. This woman, dressed in a blue smock with flowers, green scrubs, and surgical gloves, had managed to walk out with Kamiyah without raising suspicion. The police launched a citywide search, sealing off the hospital, stopping buses, and alerting airports to be on the lookout for the baby. Every corner of Jacksonville was scrutinized, from trains to hospital rooms, with helicopters scouring from above. Yet despite these efforts, Kamiyah was nowhere to be found. The suspect, described from surveillance and eyewitness accounts, was believed to be an African-American woman in her early 30s, possibly wearing a wig with shoulder-length dark brown hair. The theory was that she might have been someone who had recently lost a child, or was pretending to be pregnant. The police pursued numerous leads, asked for public assistance, and remained hopeful, relying on statistics that favored the recovery of abducted infants. Days turned into agonizing weeks for Kamiyah's family, left to wonder about her fate and well-being, along with the identity of the woman who had so brazenly taken her away from them. With no photographs of Kamiyah taken before her abduction, the authorities were forced to release a composite sketch to aid in her identification, a hopeful plea to the public for any information that might lead to her safe return. Despite the detectives' optimism and the high recovery rate in similar cases, Kamiyah remained missing. Questions haunted everyone involved. Was Kamiyah still alive? Was she safe? Who was the woman who had so shamelessly taken her, and why? In the wake of Kamiyah Mobley's disappearance, the investigation took a turn that saw suspicion cast in multiple directions. At the heart of this turmoil was Craig Aiken, Kamiyah's father, who found himself under the microscope despite being incarcerated at the time of his daughter's birth and subsequent abduction. The complexity of his relationship with Shanera Mobley due to their age difference and the circumstances of Kamiyah's conception added layers to an already intricate case. Despite his physical absence, Craig's desire to understand what happened to his daughter was as strong as Shanera's. As days turned into weeks with no sign of Kamiyah, the focus of suspicion shifted unpredictably. Shanera, a young mother of only 16, faced scrutiny not only from law enforcement, but from the community, and even those closest to her. The unthinkable notion that she might have had a role in her own daughter's disappearance was compounded by Craig's own legal troubles, which seemed to cast a shadow over their plight. The investigation was relentless, with police exploring every conceivable angle, including the possibility that Craig had orchestrated the abduction from behind bars, or that Shanera and Craig had colluded in some way. The pressure on Shanera was immense, leading to a heart-wrenching moment when she defended her innocence with a poignant reflection on her choice to bring Kamiyah into the world despite challenging circumstances. The ripple effect of suspicion even touched Shanera's mother, who was present during the abduction. The weight of guilt and the instinct to find someone to blame engulfed the family, causing fractures and accusations that only added to the pain. Throughout this ordeal, the police and the public kept a keen eye on the family, dissecting their every move and word. As the investigation broadened, the authorities spared no resources, combing through leads, interviewing countless individuals, and distributing flyers with Kamiyah's sketch and details about the suspect. The hospital Kamiyah was abducted from announced a significant reward of $250,000, hoping to entice information that could lead to her return. Yet despite these efforts, the case turned cold, with Kamiyah's whereabouts remaining a mystery. The emotional toll on Cheryl was immeasurable. She lived in a state of suspended grief, holding on to hope by commemorating Kamiyah's birth each year with a cake, a symbol of her unwavering love and the hope of reunion. The legal battle against the hospital for its security failures resulted in a financial settlement, but no amount could compensate for the loss Cheryl endured. It wasn't until after nearly 2 decades before the truth about Kamiyah's fate would emerge. A revelation that would finally answer the agonizing questions that haunted Cheryl. In 2017, an astonishing revelation came to light in Walterboro, South Carolina, that would unravel the mystery of Kamiyah Mobley's disappearance. A teenager named Alexis Manigo, at 18 years old, faced a life-altering discovery. Alexis, eager to embark on her journey into adulthood with her first job, encountered a significant hurdle. She lacked the necessary identification and social security number to proceed. It was this pivotal moment that led her so-called mother, Gloria Williams, to confess a shocking truth. Alexa was not her biological daughter. Gloria revealed that she abducted Alexis from a hospital on the day she was born, raising her as her own ever since. The emotional turmoil that ensued for Alexis was profound. Despite the staggering revelation, Alexis grappled with conflicting loyalties. She implored Gloria to flee, to evade the authorities, and continue their lives in secrecy. However, Gloria, burdened by the weight of her actions, felt compelled to face the consequences. She could not bear the thought of leaving Alexis, the daughter she had raised for 18 years, despite the origins of that relationship. Alexis, torn and bewildered, confided in only a close friend, having carried that heavy secret alone. Nevertheless, approximately a year and a half after this confession, an anonymous tip to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children blew the case wide open. Authorities were alerted, leading to a pre-dawn arrest at Gloria's residence. Amidst the chaos, January 12, 2017, was the day police received the DNA confirmation that Alexis, now known to the world as Kamiyah Mobley, was the long-lost child kidnapped 18 years earlier. This breakthrough not only closed a chapter on an 18-year-long mystery, but also opened a complex web of emotions, identities, and legal ramifications. Alexis, now aware of her true heritage, was thrust into the national spotlight, embodying the living link between a painful past and a hopeful future. Kamiyah Mobley's life story is one marked by an extraordinary journey, from abduction to discovery, and the complex process of reuniting with her biological family. Born on July 10, 1998, to Cheryl Mobley and Craig Aiken, Kamiyah was abducted by Gloria Williams, who raised her as her own daughter, Alexis Manigo, in Walterboro, South Carolina. In this small, close-knit community, Alexis grew up as a typical young woman, doing well in school, attending church on Sundays, and sharing a close bond with Gloria, whom she believed to be her mother. Alexis's upbringing was filled with normal activities, such as cheering on her big brother at basketball games and getting her nails done with Gloria, who provided her with love, care, and the comfort of a stable home. Despite the nurturing environment, the truth about Alexis's origin was a shadow that loomed large, eventually coming to light in a revelation that would change everything. The emotional roller coaster that followed the discovery of her true identity was compounded by the legal ramifications for Gloria Williams. As Alexis grappled with the reality of her situation, authorities worked to reconnect her with her birth parents, Shanera and Craig. The reunion process was filled with mixed emotions, from Shanera's unimaginable joy and relief at finding her daughter alive, to the complexities of building a relationship from scratch. Their first meeting over FaceTime was a poignant moment, marked by mutual curiosity and a surprising ease of communication, as if no strangers were present, but rather a family separated only by circumstances. Despite the initial warmth, challenges lay ahead. Shanera's disappointment upon learning that Alexis had not alerted authorities upon discovering her abduction highlighted the tangled web of emotions and loyalties at play. Alexis's desire to continue to be identified as Alexis and her reluctance to see Gloria face severe punishment underscored the depth of their bond and the difficulty of navigating her newfound reality. For Shanera and Craig, the dream of a seamless reunion faced hurdles as they confronted Alexis's allegiance to the only mother she had ever known. Gloria Williams, born in 1965, found herself at a tumultuous point in her life around the time she abducted Kamiyah Mobley in 1998. At 33 years old, Gloria had experienced the profound loss of a miscarriage, a fact she kept hidden, allowing her to maintain the appearance of a pregnancy due to phantom pregnancy symptoms. This period was marked by intense pressure from her then-boyfriend, Charles Menigo, whose desire for a child was entangled with a pattern of physical abuse, which Gloria believes led to her miscarriage. The situation at home had deteriorated to such an extent that Gloria's sons from a previous marriage were deemed unsafe and taken to live with their father. Charles insisted on having a baby, as he believed a baby would stabilize their volatile relationship. Driven by a mix of despair and hope for a change, Gloria went on what she described as autopilot, embarking on a 4-hour drive that ended at the hospital where Shanera Mobley was about to give birth. In the hospital, Gloria found herself in Shanera's room, where a vulnerable moment was shared. Shanera's uncertainties about motherhood resonated with Gloria's deep-seated yearning to fulfill her partner's demands for a child. This led Gloria to impersonate a nurse, abduct Kamiyah, and create a narrative that would not be questioned by her own family or Charles. Upon returning home with Kamiyah, Gloria faced her parents' confusion with a concocted story of an emergency birth in Charleston. Despite the precarious foundation of lies, Gloria managed to fabricate records for Alexis, or Kamiyah, and maintain this false reality for 18 years. However, the arrival of Kamiyah did not mend the fractures in Gloria's relationship with Charles, contrary to her hopes. The act of abducting Kamiyah became a pivotal moment in Gloria's life, not for the reasons she had envisioned, but because it propelled her to leave the abusive relationship with Charles. This decision was not spurred by the expected stabilization a child might have brought, but by a newfound resolve to provide a safer environment for Kamiyah. In the years that followed, Gloria rebuilt her life, marrying a supportive and loving husband, and regaining custody of her 2 sons. The long-standing mystery of Kamiyah Mobley's disappearance was resolved with the arrest of Gloria Williams on January 13, 2017, from her South Carolina home. The following year, a trial that captured the nation's attention began. On February 12, 2018, Williams, facing the possibility of life imprisonment, entered a guilty plea for kidnapping and interference with custody, accepting a plea deal that capped her sentence at 22 years. The courtroom was a tableau of deep emotion, with Sharon Mobley and Craig Aiken seated prominently behind the prosecution, embodying the pain of years lost. Kamiyah, known to the world as Alexis Manigo, positioned herself away from both sides, embodying the complex loyalties that had defined her life. The trial was marked by tears and heartbreak, highlighting the indelible impact of Williams' actions on everyone involved. Kamiyah's decision not to testify underscored the no-win situation she found herself in. Despite recognizing Sharon as her birth mother and discovering a family she never knew, her allegiance to Williams, the only mother she had known, remained strong. Williams had provided her with love and a semblance of a normal life, complicating Kamiyah's feelings towards her biological parents, who sought justice for the abduction that tore their family apart. Sharon's testimony was a poignant reminder of the joy and hope she felt upon becoming a mother, only to have it snatched away. Craig, too, expressed the enduring pain of never having known his daughter, directing his anguish towards Williams in court. The trial revealed the deep wounds inflicted on both families, exacerbated by the continued bond between Kamiyah and Williams, which Sharon viewed as a betrayal. Williams' testimony provided insight into her mindset at the time of the abduction. Describing herself as broken and desperate during that period, she recounted the pressures and abuse that led to her kidnapping Kamiyah, hoping to salvage her relationship with her abusive boyfriend. Her apology to Sharon and Craig, while acknowledging the pain she had caused, highlighted the complexity of her emotions and actions. Ultimately, on June 8, 2018, Williams was sentenced to 18 years in prison, a decision that left no one unscathed. Kamiyah's struggle with her identity and allegiance, the Mobley family's quest for justice, and Williams' acknowledgement of her wrongdoing painted a picture of profound loss and the search for closure. The trial's aftermath saw Kamiyah grappling with her dual identity and the reality of her life story. Returning to Walterboro and the home where she was raised, she faced the challenge of reconciling her past with her future. The relationships between Kamiyah, Sharon, and Williams remained fraught, a testament to the lasting impact of Williams' actions on multiple generations.
So I still lost. It's no winning situation. I don't have a relationship with my child. Right now, speaking at this moment, so I still lost. So what did I gain? Nothing. And honestly, I wish sometimes she would have never came back. That I do wish, because it takes a toll, because I'm a mother first. And it takes a toll on my other children. My daughter's going to the 10th grade. Well, she have to argue with people to defend her mother. She's on Facebook defending my kid, my other babies. They are babies. They shouldn't have to go out there in that world and experience that stuff. That shouldn't have to be their life. And this is what Gloria and Kamiyah brought upon my children. And I truly, really feel deep in my heart, I just wish she wouldn't have never came back. I really do. because you came back. This woman made a mockery of my life when she took my baby. And not only did you make a mockery when you brought my baby back, but you let her help you make a mockery of my life. And this judge allowed this lady to keep reaching out to my child every day. So she's still committing a crime, and you had the right to stop that, and you did not. So no, I don't have no respect for that judge.
In December of 2018, Kamiyah Mobley made a life-altering decision to move to Jacksonville, Florida, to be closer to her biological family. A step that was met with overwhelming joy and public support, as evidenced by her father's proud announcement on Facebook. This move represented not just a change in Kamiyah's living situation, but a significant step towards healing and building a relationship with her biological parents. Despite the complexities and emotional turmoil that had characterized their interaction since her discovery and the trial of Gloria Williams. Kamiyah's transition to life in Jacksonville was not without its challenges. The emotional strain of navigating relationships with both her biological family and the woman she had always known as her mother, Gloria, continued to be a source of tension and heartache. Sharon Mobley, Kamiyah's biological mother, expressed feelings of having to compete with Gloria for Kamiyah's affection, highlighting the intricate dynamics at play. At one point, Sharon even questioned whether the reunion had caused more harm than good, given the emotional turmoil that it stirred. Despite these challenges, Kamiyah's commitment to forging a path forward was evident in her efforts to integrate into her new environment and the life milestones she achieved. By the age of 21, Kamiyah had secured employment, obtained a legal government ID, and acquired her driver's license. Achievements that marked her growing independence and her desire to move forward with her life. Importantly, when it came time to choose a legal name for her ID, Kamiyah chose Kamiyah Mobley, embracing her birth identity while navigating the complexities of her dual heritage. Kamiyah's relationship with Gloria Williams, though complicated by the circumstances of her upbringing, remained a significant part of her life. She continued to visit Gloria in prison, maintaining a connection with the woman who had raised her. This ongoing relationship underscored Kamiyah's struggle to balance her affection for Gloria with her growing connections to her biological family. On December 15, 2023, Williams made a significant move in her case by requesting a judge to dismiss her current judgment and sentence, marking her third plea for reconsideration. She claimed her defense was severely lacking, particularly highlighting that her legal team failed to explore her mental health issues, neglected to request a competency hearing, and did not prepare an adequate defense, leaving her with no choice but to accept a plea deal. As a result, Williams criticized her attorneys for not seeking a change of venue to ensure a fair trial. Her motion advocates for the right to retract her plea, undergo a new competency evaluation, and, if deemed competent, to restart the legal process. So what do you think about Williams' current move in the case? And how do you view the challenges faced by Kamiyah's biological family in reconnecting with her? On November 22, 1985, in St. Clair Shores, Michigan, two childhood best friends and former Boy Scouts, David Kenneth Tyll and Brian George Ognjan, set out from home with the hopes of having a relaxing hunting weekend experience. They, along with their loved ones, had plans that both men would be returning home, safe and hearty, as taking a weekend trip to the cabin was practically a ritual for both men. But what was supposed to be a fulfilling trip turned into a sad one for their loved ones, as it culminated in the unexpected disappearance of both men. Where did two grown men go? And how could they completely disappear without a trace? St. Clair Shores, a city with a population of 57,742 as of July 1, 2022, is currently experiencing a population decline, but remains hopeful of future growth, as outlined by the city's Grand Plan. Originally a part of Erin Township from 1843 to 1911, sections of St. Clair Shores are now incorporated within East Point, the Grosse Pointes, and St. Clair Shores itself. In 1911, the township's name changed to Lake Township, and remained so until 2009, when the village of Grosse Pointe Shores within Macomb County voted to become a city. Thanks to its location along the shores of Lake St. Clair Shores witnessed rapid development from a resort community to a suburban city after World War II. Even before its incorporation in 1951, St. Clair Shores was recognized as the largest village in the United States. One of the city's notable events is the annual Memorial Day Parade, which attracts a large crowd. St. Clair Shores is also renowned for its nautical mile. Previously, the city was home to the Jefferson Beach Amusement Park, established in 1927. Unfortunately, a fire in 1955 led to the destruction of several park buildings. Although attempts were made to rebuild, the remaining structures were later demolished to make way for a marina in 1959. The city faces challenges such as aging infrastructure, falling value of commercial and retail spaces, as well as the housing stock. However, St. Clair Shores boasts a remarkably low crime rate compared to other cities in the United States. In a poll conducted by Niche on 20 individuals, 68% felt very safe with minimal concerns. 30% felt completely safe with no concerns. 5% felt somewhat safe, and another 5% did not feel safe. Despite this overall safety, the disappearance of 2 grown men has cast a shadow over the city's history. The case, which has been ongoing for 18 years and is believed to have been a murder, has left many residents concerned and anxious. On a day that was supposed to be filled with fun for David Tyll and Brian Ognjan, 2 best friends whose history went as far back as their Boy Scout days, turned into a day of sadness and worry for their loved ones. The day started with David picking Brian up at his home in St. Clair Shores. Then Brian cashed a $50 check, and that seemed to be the last heard about them, as told by Denise, David's wife, who they dropped off right after that. They had already planned to visit a friend, Denise Gallup, in Mayo, 150 miles east before heading to Baseline Road, White Cloud in northern Michigan, where both men were supposed to go deer hunting with David's father, younger brother, and close friends in David's family cabin. But they never stopped by their friend, and neither did they reach the cabin, as they never purchased a hunting license. No one at the cabin raised an eyebrow at their absence the night they left because they had already called to inform Matt, David's brother, that they wouldn't be pulling up till Saturday. But all hell broke loose when both of them didn't show up by Saturday, and nobody at the cabin was able to reach them. And neither did Denise, who was home all along. After the police became involved, a report for missing persons was filed and investigations were made over the years.
But in 1985, a bizarre disappearance would put this tiny town in the crosshairs of a criminal investigation.
Several witnesses identified seeing them and David's 1980s black Ford Bronco at a tavern in the Houghton Lake Mayo area. It was believed that something happened to them there, because to date, both men and David's car still haven't been found. It was discovered that both men were last seen at the tavern Linker's Lounge near Mayo, where they drank heavily and got into a physical confrontation with a group of people. We're left with a lot of questions, like why the men never made it to their friend's place when they were in the area, what the confrontation was about, and the most obvious one, where did the 2 grown men disappear and why? The only thing the police could come up with were suspects, but no concrete evidence was found.
They don't find the car, they don't find guns, clothing.
They just fell off the face of the earth.
The investigation went on for a total of 18 years, with no evidence, till a witness spoke up. In 1990, investigators got a lead from an undisclosed informant that both men were drinking at a bar called Linkers in Mayo on the night of their disappearance. There, they quarreled with a group of men, which resulted in the use of fists. Police did not have any evidence, as the people in the area where the incident occurred were giving inconclusive and lacking evidence in comparison to the informants. Everyone declared that both men were at the bar and drank that night, but they all excluded the altercation part, like it never happened. Neither did major witnesses like the bar owner mention the presence of the group or the presence of the witnesses. This we'll find out more about later on. The police kept making rounds, but it seemed like it was all leading to a dead end. At some point, they got a lead that pointed to the Duvall brothers, but a few days later, the witness died. This turned the attention of the police to the brothers, but with insufficient evidence, they had to let it go. Eventually, it gradually turned into another cold case. That is until 1999, when Detective Lesneski reopened the case and managed to successfully get some bit of truth out of the citizens in the area. The investigation of the case of David Tyll and Brian Ognjan finally saw a breakthrough on October 22, 2003. As a witness, Barbara Boudreau told the police that she witnessed the crime that took place in 1985, close to her house on Mapes Road, about 1.5 miles from Linker's Bar. She told the police that she and a friend named Ronald Emery were at the bar when the two hunters entered and started causing a disturbance. The suspects, Raymond Wilbur J.R. Duvall and Donald Dean Coco, and another brother named Rex Duvall, also arrived at the bar. And she later overheard J.R. making a phone call asking for help. Sensing trouble, she and two of her friends left for home. Later that evening, Boudreau says she heard noises from her kitchen and went to investigate. She heard men arguing and cursing, and one man threatening another's life. Boudreau and Emery went outside and witnessed the suspects cruelly beating the victims. Coco struck one of them, who she later identified as Tyll, on the head, and it exploded. Before the men proceeded to kick and punch the other victim, who she later identified as Ognjan. Boudreau left with Emery, and shortly after, the brothers appeared at her door, warning her not to say anything. Over the years, Boudreau faced numerous threats on her and the lives of other family members, especially after investigators had questioned her. She eventually revealed the incident to law enforcement after the death of her friends who were with her that night, but initially, due to fear about the brothers, claimed that Emery and not she was the witness. However, she later admitted that she also witnessed the murders. It would be good to note that Boudreau, on the night of the incident, had taken over 7 alcoholic drinks, but her confession gave strength to the confessions of others like Edward LeVere, who had known the suspects for 20 years, and they were together in the junk car business. He had lived with them for a time, and Coco later rented from him. During an eviction, Coco threatened to do the same thing to him that he had done to the hunters. Tammy Morris, who was a cousin of the Duvalls and the ex-wife of a man named Lloyd Harmon, testified that she heard parts of the conversation about the two hunters while at a bar in Wixom for her sister's birthday party in 1987. Later, Lloyd Harmon himself testified in court, as well as Connie Sundberg, who lived with Coco from 1980 to 1989. Finally, the grand jury testimony of deceased witness Eileen Sitz, who lived with JR for several years until 1984, was read into the record in court. All the above witnesses, aside from Barbara Boudreau, witnessed the brothers in one way or the other bragging about killing the hunters, cutting them up, and feeding them to their pigs. This breakthrough gave a clearer picture of the unexplained disappearance of both men. Further shreds of evidence that later became court testimonies gave great backing and validity to Barbara's story, which led to the arrest and subsequent jail sentencing of the Duvall brothers, bringing an end to this 18-year-long mystery. David Kenneth Tyll, nicknamed Dave, was born on August 21, 1958, to parents Arthur and Catherine Tyll. Married to Denise Dudley, he lived in Troy till the time of his disappearance and had features of brown hair, green eyes, a beard, height of 6'2", and weighed 175 pounds. He worked as a machinist for his father till the point of his absence. Brian Ognjan was born on January 16, 1958, to parents Helen M. and George Ognjan. He lived in St. Clair Shores with no legal spouse reported. His features were light brown hair and brown eyes, with a height of 5'10". He was a telecommunications mechanic till the time of his disappearance. David and Brian were both 27 years old and had been best friends since their Boy Scout days. They both grew up in Detroit, Michigan. They did a lot of things together, like playing card games and enjoying the outdoors together. Not hunting in particular, just the peace of the outdoors. This love of theirs eventually led to their disappearance, leaving their families devastated and heartbroken for years, before leaving them more shattered at the revelation of their gruesome murders 18 years later by witness Barbara Boudreau. For the families, the aftermath of the witness account led to closure of reopened wounds and permanent loss of both men for the rest of their lives. Raymond Wilbur Duvall, known as JR, was born November 21, 1950, aged 35 at the time of the incident and 53 at the time of arrest, with hair color brown and blue eyes. His height was 5'9", and he weighed 160 pounds. JR had a daughter who took in her father's footsteps of crime-seeking. Donald Dean Duvall, known as Coco, was born February 26, 1952, aged 33 at the time of the incident and 51 at the time of arrest, with hair color gray and hazel eyes. His height was 5'5", and he weighed 150 pounds. Coco was married before his arrest and had children with his wife. It would be safe to say that the Duvalls had a long history of crime in their family, as further research showed that their father died in prison, and Dawn, JR's daughter, had plenty of charges against her, including a murder charge. It would be good to note that during the case, another Duvall brother claimed that he did not kill the best friends, but helped transport their bodies. Yet another Duvall brother, Kenny, had scrapped the hunter's vehicle and sold it for parts. This he told the police in a taped interview, but had courtroom amnesia while on the stand. The trial started in 2003 after the statement from the sole witness, Barbara, was obtained. At trial, the victim's family members and friends testified about the victim's hunting plans for the weekend of November 22, 1985. They confirmed that the men left in Till's 1981 black Ford Bronco that Friday afternoon, likely for the Mayo area, where their other friend lived, and planned to come back on Sunday evening. They never returned home. The victims' families reported them missing to the authorities. Newspaper articles were written about them, and searches were conducted, but the men and their vehicle were never found. Eventually, the men were declared dead. The Michigan Court of Appeals summarized the case as follows. Defendants' convictions arise from the disappearance and suspected killing of two hunters, who never returned from a weekend hunting trip in November 1985 in the Mayo area of northern Michigan. The two men, David Tyll and Brian Ognjan, had planned to travel to Tyll's family cabin in White Cloud and visit a friend, Denise Gallup, in Mayo, but they never arrived at either location. According to the prosecutor's theory of the case, the defendants, along with other unidentified individuals, beat the victims to death after they became involved in an argument. The victims' bodies were never found, nor were their car or other personal effects ever located. The prosecutor's case principally relied on the testimony of a resident, Barbara Boudreau.
You saw nothing, you heard nothing. We know you and your family, pigs have to eat too.
Who claimed to have witnessed the killings and on various statements allegedly made by defendants admitting to their participation in the killings. Raymond Duval Jr. and Donald Duval were each convicted at a joint jury trial of 2 counts of first-degree murder. Both of them were sentenced to 2 concurrent terms of life imprisonment without parole. The verdict left the men's family members to bear the hurt of their loss. Their partners moved on with their lives after a long time of coming to acceptance. All witnesses, especially Barbara, moved on with their lives without any worry for their safety or that of their family members because of the sentence passed on the brothers. It would be safe to say that this arrest did not bring an end to the family's long history of crime, as JR's daughter would later be involved in a series of crime-related events, including murder. Neither David nor Brian's remains have ever been found. However, in 2009, police received tips about the possible location of their remains.
Of the time they murdered 2 hunters and the loathsome way they disposed of their bodies. On November 13th, the brothers are cut down to size, sent to jail for life without the possibility of parole.
Based on Barbara's statements, investigators also believed that at least 3 other men were involved in the attack on the hunters. However, no one else has ever been charged. The David Tyll and Brian Ognjan case is a profound story of human cruelty and the power brute force has over morality. What do you think about the gruesome murders of David and Brian? And do you think the Duval brothers got the right sentence? On November 2nd, 1989, a typical workday turned tragic for 38-year-old Sharon Bloom, a systems analyst at 3M in Woodbury. After she didn't show up at her home in Minneapolis that evening, her boyfriend, David Kofod, quickly notified the police. While searching for Sharon, the police found her car still parked at her workplace, 3M, untouched. Sadly, 10 days later, on November 12th, her body was found in a Rice County cornfield. Based on the state she was found, it was evident that she had suffered a fatal attack to the head. Who was responsible for Sharon Bloom's death? And what finally led to the breakthrough in this decades-old case? Woodbury, Minnesota, with a population of over 78,561 as of 2022, is a city known for its strong community feel and high quality of life. The violent crime rate in Woodbury is considerably low, at 0.8776 incidents per 1,000 residents, placing it in the 87th percentile for safety compared to other cities in the U.S. Nonetheless, the tragic incident involving Sharon Bloom remains a stark reminder that crime can occur anywhere, even in communities that are generally considered safe. Sharon Phyllis Bloom, born on November 4th, 1951, led a life that was filled with routine, hopes, and relationships that define many of our lives. Much of her early life remains unknown to the public. Her parents, Leonard Bloom, who passed away in 1993, and Ida Esther Dolnick Bloom, who left us in 2000, provided her with a childhood that was filled with the same mixture of love, guidance, and challenges that shape many families. While specific details of her childhood, education, and possible siblings remain unknown, what stands out in her adult life is her professional dedication and personal warmth. Before her untimely death, Sharon had carved out a professional niche as a systems analyst at 3M in Woodbury. This role served as a cornerstone in the field of technology and system management in the late 20th century. From this, Sharon's intellectual curiosity and professional capacity could be easily deduced. Her work at 3M, a company known for innovation, speaks to a career that was both challenging and rewarding. Sharon's character, described as loving and fun with everyone, paints a picture of a woman who was not just dedicated to her work, but also cherished by those around her. This warmth and openness undoubtedly made her a valued colleague and friend. November 2, 1989, unfolded just like any other day in Minnesota, marking a morning routine that saw 38-year-old Sharon Bloom bid farewell to her live-in boyfriend, David Kofod, as she left for her job at the 3M company in Woodbury. Like any other day, Sharon had begun her duties as a system analyst at 7:30 a.m. The hours ticked by uneventfully, until concern crept in the mind of David, when Sharon failed to return to their shared apartment for their evening meal. His worry escalated after learning from Sharon's workplace that she had not come back from her lunch break, which she had left for around 11:20 a.m. In response to his growing apprehension, David requested the night shift employees at 3M to verify if Sharon's vehicle, a Honda, was still in the parking lot, discovering that it indeed was. This confirmation brought an unsettling realization that something was amiss. The night dragged on without any sign of Sharon, plunging David into a state of anxious anticipation for her return, which never came. By the break of dawn on November 3, 1989, with Sharon still missing, David promptly reported her disappearance to the Woodbury Police Department. The case was then assigned to investigator David Hines, who embarked on an investigation into the unsettling disappearance. The investigation into Sharon Bloom's disappearance kicked off with her car as a lone piece of evidence. Yet a thorough check revealed nothing inside or around the vehicle.
Quickly getting to the idea that she had definitely disappeared from the workplace.
Investigator Hines then turned his attention to Sharon's workplace, uncovering alarming behaviors from a fellow colleague towards her, according to statements from other staff. In the lead-up to her disappearance, Sharon found herself the focus of anonymous antics at work. Her personal belongings, including items from her secured desk and materials crucial for a presentation, mysteriously moved or vanished, only to reappear later, or not at all. Additionally, 4 sets of keys went missing, never to be recovered, and on one troubling occasion, her chair cushion was doused in coffee. These actions went far beyond harmless office pranks, pointing towards harassment targeted against Sharon. She had shared her growing fears for her safety with colleagues, troubled by the intensity of the animosity from this unknown individual.
And was in tears, and her reaction was, what could I have done to somebody that could cause them to hate me so much?
This atmosphere of fear and the deliberate targeting suggested to detectives that someone in her professional circle harbored a deep-seated grudge against her. However, the motive and identity of the person remained elusive. This deepened the mystery surrounding her untimely death. In the puzzling case of Sharon Bloom's disappearance, a significant development emerged when investigators zeroed in on an intriguing lead. On the day Sharon went missing, it came to light that all her co-workers had made it back from lunch, except for one individual, Stephen Zanter. Working in the same capacity as Sharon as a systems analyst at 3M, Zanter's absence during this critical time frame raised eyebrows and cast a shadow of suspicion over him. When pressed by detectives, Zanter was quick to offer an explanation for his whereabouts on that day.
For us an alibi right away, but it was an alibi that wasn't alibying him. It was an alibi that made no sense, in fact.
He recounted leaving work around 11 a.m., grabbing lunch at a Burger King in Maplewood, and then experiencing car trouble on his way back to the office. According to Zanter, his car broke down, and after an indeterminate wait, a motorist, whom he could not describe, helped him jump-start his vehicle. Claiming to feel unwell, he then decided to head home to Egan, where he took a bath to warm up and informed his workplace around 2 p.m. that he would not be returning that day. Zanter insisted that he spent the remainder of the day at his house, although there was no one to verify his story. The inability to identify the motorist who allegedly assisted him further weakened his alibi. Suspicion toward Zanter wasn't solely based on his shaky alibi. Colleagues revealed a potential motive, highlighting a strained relationship between Sharon and Zanter, stemming from workplace jealousy. Zanter had reportedly felt insulted when Sharon was promoted over him, an advancement he believed he deserved more. This detail, along with questionable behavior in the past, painted a concerning picture. One coworker, Tamra House, recounted an incident where Zanter had taken a computer manual from her desk without permission, an act that, while seemingly minor, contributed to the growing distrust towards him. The investigation intensified with the involvement of a detective, Ray DePrima, from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, alongside Detective David Hines. Their focus remained on Zanter, who during an interview at his home with his wife, Barbara, admitted to being aware of pranks played on Sharon, but denied any involvement in her disappearance. His narrative for the day she vanished remained unchanged. The case took a dramatic turn when, during this interview, they received news that on November 12, 1989, Sharon Bloom's body had been discovered in a cornfield in Rice County, showing signs of a vicious attack. Presented with this grim development, police decided to reveal it to Zanter to see his reaction, which they found to be rather distressing.
We were in his family room, and he became catatonic. He started crying, became almost convulsive, and he was on the floor. He went all the way around his family room on his knees.
According to the police, Zanter expressed a peculiar wish that Sharon wouldn't be found. This comment was quickly clarified by his wife to be him hoping that she wouldn't be found dead. Zanter's subsequent emotional breakdown and ambiguous comments further contributed towards the detective's suspicions. Despite collecting blood and hair samples from Zanter, the absence of direct evidence prevented his arrest. The investigation faced a significant setback when the autopsy results revealed the biological material found on Sharon's body did not match Zanter, and hair samples from the scene proved to be inconclusive. As time went on, the investigation hit a dead end due to the lack of concrete leads, and eventually, the trail went cold. More than 2 years after Sharon Bloom's tragic demise, a significant lead emerged that reignited the investigation. In February 1992, a new angle came to light when Agent DePrima interviewed co-workers of Barbara Zanter. One co-worker, Joe Sorensen from Woodland Elementary School, brought forward a particularly disturbing piece of information that happened on November 3, 1989. Joe recalled a day right after Sharon went missing. Barbara had appeared notably distracted at work. She mentioned discovering fresh bloodstains on the carpet and walls of their new home, and sought advice on cleaning them. Barbara explained her husband's claim of accidentally cutting himself, which supposedly led to the blood trail that stretched across the carpet, up the stairs, and into the bedroom on the second floor.
She didn't give a lot of detail about the way it looked, except she did use the word splattered.
Detective DePrima, seizing this opportunity, persuaded Joe to help gather more information. Sorensen agreed to record her conversations with Barbara. In a meeting arranged at Barbara's house with a few of her coworkers, all but Barbara knew about the recording.
You know, you shared a lot of stuff with us that at the time all of this chaos was, and I don't know, do they know all of that? What kind of things? Well, tell me what you're thinking of. Well, I think the one thing, and I brought it up a little bit when we went for our walk, was the and the blood that you found in the house on. It was real close to the time when Sharon Bloom disappeared.
Yeah, that bothered me too, and I questioned Steve about it a couple times. And he told me that what happened was he got frustrated trying to work on the car, and he just lost it, whacked his hand down, and he cut his wrist. And he didn't, he wasn't thinking clearly. He ran up in the house, and he went upstairs, because that's where we keep our medical supplies, so he could bandage it up. And he said, when I reached for the railing, I think I must have felt faint, and I reached for the railing, and that's why the blood is at the top of the stairs. We didn't tell the police about all that. They don't know about the blood on the carpet, I don't think.
Barbara admitted not having shared these details with the police, hinting at a possible state of denial about her husband's capacity for violence. Armed with this newfound evidence, law enforcement obtained a search warrant for the Zanters' home. On March 4, 1992, they conducted a thorough search, employing luminol tests that revealed traces of blood throughout the second floor. Among the items seized was a set of keys found in a dresser in the basement, which were later discovered to belong to Sharon Bloom. Also discovered in Zanters' briefcase were numerous explicit photographs, some of which depicted women in bathing suits and others featuring women in compromising positions.
We left that day, I felt the case was solved. Got the blood, we'd got the keys.
This breakthrough in the investigation brought a chilling new perspective on Stephen Zanters' involvement in Sharon Bloom's murder, pointing towards a more sinister side than previously uncovered. Stephen James Zanter, born on September 5, 1955, was intricately connected to the Sharon Bloom cold case through both his professional and personal life. Working alongside Sharon at 3M, Zanter had previously occupied the very desk that Sharon would later use, marking a long-standing relationship between the two as co-workers. Married to Barbara, Zanter was not just a family man, but also a father. Although details about his daughter, including her name, remain undisclosed. This background sketches a picture of Zanter's everyday life, juxtaposing his ordinary family and work dynamics against the backdrop of a deeply troubling investigation. On October 23, 1992, a significant turn in the Sharon Bloom cold case occurred when Zanter found himself facing charges for her murder by a Rice County grand jury. Yet, the path to justice was anything but straightforward. By August 12, 1993, the trial court made a pivotal decision to exclude key pieces of evidence obtained during searches, including the photographs and Sharon's keys that were found in Zanter's possession, due to a lack of probable cause for their seizure beyond the blood evidence. The inability to determine the source of the blood found in Zanter's home further complicated matters. leading Rice County prosecutors to drop the charges to prevent the possibility of an acquittal, and Zanter walked free, leaving the case to grow cold once again. However, the advancements in DNA technology towards the end of the 1990s brought new hope to seemingly stalled investigations. In March 1999, another breakthrough occurred when Anne Marie Gross, a forensic scientist with Minnesota's Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, conducted tests on the blood-soaked carpet from Zanter's home. This time, the blood was conclusively matched to Sharon Bloom, and hair samples from the site where her body was found match Zanter's mitochondrial DNA. Faced with the irrefutable forensic evidence, Zanter was charged again with murder. In a dramatic turn of events, he opted to plead guilty this time, in April of 2003. Zanter revealed that a confrontation at his home about workplace harassment had escalated, resulting in him attacking Sharon with a hammer and subsequently disposing of her body in a cornfield. Despite confessing, Zanter claimed he had no memory of how he cleaned up the crime scene before his family's return. Ultimately, at 47 years old, Stephen Zanter was sentenced to 25 years in prison, marking a long-awaited conclusion to a case that had lingered in uncertainty for 14 years. After 34 years of uncertainty and heartache, Sharon Bloom's family, along with her colleagues and friends, finally received the closure they had longed for. The confession and subsequent sentencing of Stephen Zanter for Sharon's murder brought a bittersweet end to a case that had remained unresolved for too long. While nothing could bring Sharon back, knowing the truth allowed those who knew and loved her to start the process of healing. What are your thoughts on the resolution of the Sharon Bloom cold case? Do you believe justice was fully served?
I came back and that kitchen door was standing open a little bit. I hadn't locked it, I didn't have a key. And went in and I found that I thought she'd been shot.
On September 30th, 1979 in Tustin, California, 20-year-old Diana Green experienced great trauma and a painful loss on what should have been a normal day in her apartment. She was heavily pregnant and home alone because her 21-year-old husband, Kevin Green, whom she had just finished watching a movie with, stepped out to get some burger. His absence was supposed to mark a period of calm and peace for the heavily pregnant Diana. But peace turned to despair in less than 30 minutes when someone barged into the apartment and violently manhandled Diana in every way possible, leaving her in a state assumed to be dead. How did this happen? And who could this vile person be? Tustin, California, sometimes referred to as the City of Trees, situated in central Orange County, covers an area of 11.08 square miles. The city shares its borders with Irvine and Santa Ana to the south, the unincorporated areas of Orange County, and the city of Orange to the north, and the unincorporated county territory and city of Irvine to the east. Tustin has a population of about 77,490 as of 2023, according to World Population Review, a 1.18% growth reduction rate, as opposed to that of the previous year at 78,418. Tustin, officially incorporated in 1927, carries a profound historical significance and takes pride in its heritage, which is reflected in its Old Town district and the well-preserved historic buildings along Main Street and El Camino Real, both dating back to the 1880s. However, it's also important to note, according to Neighborhood Scout, the crime rate in Tustin is considerably higher than the national average. Although at 28 crimes per 1,000 residents, it is not among the communities with the highest crime rate. Diana Green's case transpired, amongst others, a striking event in the city's history. A day that was supposed to be your typical average day in the home of the Greens. A day filled with bickering between the couple and constant back and forth between them, leading to moments of love and ending with a snuggled-up movie. No one expected that it would be a day that ends up tearing the new family apart. Diana Green had been married to her husband Kevin Lee Green for less than a year. Their marriage occurred 3 months after they had conceived their baby, and on the very day Kevin's divorce to his former wife was finalized. As usual, the couple had had a fallout and argued shortly before Kevin stepped out to get food, around 1 a.m. What was supposed to be a short ride for him and a moment of peace for Diana turned into a gruesome one that altered the flow of their lives forever, as Diana was assaulted within the time frame Kevin stepped out. Someone took Diana by surprise, terribly battered her head, fatally injured her, and assaulted her. This was the state an unsuspecting Kevin found her in, sprawled and unconscious in the living room. He claimed that upon entry, he noticed that their kitchen door was broken.
I came back and that kitchen door was standing open. A little bit I hadn't locked it, I didn't have a key. And went in and I found that I thought she'd been shot.
And that ushered him to the gruesome sight of what he thought was a gunshot wound to his wife's head. He proceeded to rush her to the hospital, where upon entry she was declared to have gotten trauma through blunt force, and the baby was declared okay after detecting a fetal heartbeat. But the heartbeat was lost after 8 hours, when the placenta detached and an emergency C-section had to be carried out to ensure the safety of the mother's life. Kevin was left to deal with the loss of their baby and his wife's comatose state for close to 2 weeks. Alone and confused about all that occurred in his short absence from his home, Kevin finally received the good news of his wife waking up. The joy was short-lived, as he eventually realized that his wife considered him her assaulter and was adamant about taking him to court for the murder of their unborn child. 3 months later, Kevin was arrested on October 2, 1980, for assault with a deadly weapon and second-degree murder due to the death of their unborn daughter. Kevin kept saying he was not guilty.
That did not happen. We did not have an argument. I did not strike her.
But it was his words against Diana's.
Sounded like the boogeyman did it. Didn't make sense that I could possibly leave my apartment for 40 minutes, and in that time being gone, somebody would go into my house, attack my wife, and leave her for dead. How could that happen in 40 minutes? Too convenient. So he decided I did.
Who at this point seemed to be battling severe amnesia and aphasia, a loss or impairment of the power to use or comprehend words. Her condition prolonged for months, even up to the time of the trial a year later. Dr. Martin Brenner, a psychiatrist, supported Diana's reliability as a witness. Kevin's defense request for an independent psychiatric evaluation of Diana was denied. The prosecutors presented forensic evidence of violation, including found at the scene at the time of the attack. The only thing they could do at the time was to carry out blood tests, which produced an O-negative result, which unfortunately was the same blood group as Kevin's. They couldn't take a DNA test, as it wasn't developed till a few years later. And it also wasn't introduced to the criminal system till 1986. It's good to note that it was also very expensive at that time. This evidence was backed up by the words of a friend who reported that Kevin usually complained of how he couldn't have intercourse with his wife due to her pregnancy, and how frustrated that made him feel. More evidence, while querying their neighbors, revealed that the couple usually engaged in very heated arguments. The local police testified to the fact that they had been called over to the Green residence due to cases of domestic violence.
They had been having an argument for a while over what we're not sure. We had been out to the residence before on domestic violence kind of things where they were yelling, and so that wasn't uncommon at that residence.
These facts largely supported Diana's claim that her husband, who had been occasionally hitting her, did attack her, even though Diana, at the point of the trial, could not even properly spell her surname in the court. Although Kevin continued to plead not guilty, all evidence pointed strongly at him, and he was sentenced on November 7, 1980, after 10 hours of deliberation, to spend 15 years to life in prison. Kevin continued to plead not guilty from his prison cell in Soledad, and went ahead to request a defense-administered polygraph test, which he passed. Despite that, he didn't have the funds to get a DNA test done that might have helped to reopen his case to prove his innocence. That was all until the Innocence Project, founded in 1992 by Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, discovered Kevin amongst others, and in 1996, Kevin's name was cleared. This brings us to the question of, if not Kevin Lee Green, then who did it? And what was their motivation for committing such a gruesome act? The investigation started on the very day the incident occurred. The presence of spermatozoa was detected from the slides taken from Diana's body. Then the police became fully involved after Diana woke up from her coma, and claimed to recall being beaten by her husband alone and no one else, and a full-out investigation occurred. Detective Steve Foster, who was with the Tustin PD, questioned neighbors who testified that the couple had a quarrel on the night of the incident, which ended up backing Diana's claim of him beating her because she refused to have with him.
What do you remember about that night?
Kevin came in and he wanted and I told him he was crazy. I was 2 weeks past due. Then he punched me on my face. And
He
then,
hit you with his fist?
Mm-hmm. And then he reached to the dresser, which was behind him, picked his key caddy, and he hit me. But when he was bringing that down, that was the last thing I saw.
Kevin mentioned to the police that he went to get a burger at Jack in the Box, the fast food joint close to their house, which was also confirmed by the cashier. However, Kevin met a queue which made him leave to Santa Ana, making him stay out longer than it was supposed to be. Another strong alibi, as noted by police reports, was that the hamburgers were hot when the first responders arrived at the scene. When Kevin was questioned, he mentioned that while on his way, he saw a black man near a van who was acting very suspiciously. But he didn't put any thought into it. He also saw this same man when he came back, but the officer found it hard to believe his words as his wife kept insisting that he assaulted her, and there was no other person involved. According to him, it didn't make sense that Kevin would have to leave the nearby Jack in the Box and go to Santa Ana, which was approximately 15 minutes away by car.
At 1:30 in the morning after this movie ended, I had been thinking about wanting a cheeseburger from Jack in the Box, and it's across the street. So I decided to get up and go to the Jack in the Box and get some food. He just kind of glanced over his left shoulder at me and kept walking. I saw him reaching his arm out to the door, the driver's door of the van. He kind of ducked his head down as he did that.
And I recall him telling me that he saw, a black man in a black van. And my mindset at the time was, yeah, right.
It's also good to note that at Kevin's mention of a mysterious man loitering very close to their apartment, the police proceeded to include Diana's case as a case of assault. Such cases were rampant at the time in the area, where most of the victims were bashed on the head violently before being but they thought twice about it and decided to go with the evidence and the clear admission by Diana that her husband was the only one who assaulted her. This further led to the arrest and trial of Kevin Lee Green, where based on the evidence provided, he was charged with 15 years to life imprisonment, and he ended up serving 15 years before the actual culprit would be found.
And then the judge read that they were finding me guilty of second-degree murder.
A non-profit organization called the Innocence Project was created to overturn wrongful convictions and overhaul the criminal justice system. This organization was created after findings created by the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Senate in conjunction with the Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law, which showed that eyewitness misidentification played a part in more than 70% of wrongful convictions. This is backed by Dr. Elizabeth Loftus and Catherine Ketchum's book, The Myth of Repressed Memory: False Memories and Allegations of Sexual Abuse, where they wrote about misled memory. Also, recent studies on closed head injuries, or CHIs, showed that damage to the prefrontal lobe not only caused memory loss, but also heightened susceptibility to creating false memories. These were some of the foundations on which the organization functioned. The Innocence Project went on to work on a lot of cases within 17 years of its inception, with most of the people affected by eyewitness misidentification and most of the victims being poor or from minor ethnic groups. They, during their investigations, matched the DNA of an already registered offender, Gerald Parker, who was at that point undergoing investigations for other crimes committed. They acquired Gerald's submitted file and went on to contact Kevin after getting Gerald's statement.
They were arguing in the house. I was standing outside the window. And then I didn't know he was coming out, and he got in his car and left.
So you pick up the cord, you go in,
right.
And what happens? Where is she at when you first?
She's in the bedroom. Okay. Well, first when I open the door, she's in bed, and she sits up, almost as if in recognition of somebody that she thought that I was, but I wasn't.
And what happened?
And she laid back down as if she recognized me. I guess she thought it was her husband or boyfriend, whichever the case he was. And then I rushed into the room and hit her over the head with the board.
Did that knock her out right away?
Right.
Okay, so she's knocked out, then what happened?
Then I...
This breakthrough not only closed a chapter on a 15-year-long mystery, but also helped exonerate an innocent man who never got parole because he kept pleading not guilty for the crime he was accused of. Kevin, now a free man, proceeded to clear his name of all charges, leaving behind a painful past and looking forward to a hopeful future. Gerald Parker, also known as the Bedroom Basher and the Bludgeon Killer, was born in 1955 to mother Frankie Wagner Parker in Phoenix, Arizona. Frankie died while birthing her 10th child, and this led Gerald's dad to make a run for it, abandoning his family while Gerald was only 8 years old. This forced Gerald to move in with his grandmother, where he was sent to juvenile hall for sniffing glue during the 5 months he was there. Then he and his brother moved into his cousin Florence Russell's place in Logan Heights. Despite his childhood at Boys Republic, a private all-boys school for troubled kids, his cousin states that he never gave her any problems. In 1973, Gerald joined the Marine Corps and received training in San Diego and Camp Pendleton. He was then stationed at Adak Naval Air Facility as a barrack security guard for a year. Gerald was later transferred to various locations in North Carolina and Mississippi. Finally, in September of 1975, he arrived in Tustin. He served as a staff sergeant at Marine Corps Air Station El Toro from late 1979. However, he was dishonorably discharged the next year due to a felony conviction. As per Gerald's candid disclosures to forensic psychiatrist Dr. Paul Blair, an unsettling pattern emerged. It appeared that Gerald, from the tender age of 7 until 15, had developed a concerning habit of inhaling glue, paint, and paint thinner. Additionally, at the youthful age of 11, he had already initiated the use of marijuana. Shockingly, Gerald admitted to delving deeper into substance abuse, with claims of intravenous indulgence in PCP, LSD, and speedballs. Furthermore, he disturbingly confessed to consuming an entire case of beer daily for an extensive span of 10 to 11 years. He had a total of 11 victims, of which 6 died and 5 survived, including Diana Green. It's hard for me to believe all this. Somebody else hurt me. Here I've 17 years, believing it was Kevin. It's just hard to handle, Diana told the Orange County Register. Gerald was declared the criminal of Diana Green's case in 1996. On June 21, 1996, Gerald was back in prison on a parole violation and was charged with 6 murders. DNA experts testified that his sample, when compared to the samples found from the crime scenes in which Diana's was included, were indistinguishable from each other. Diana is still unable to have a full grasp of her memories, and the fact that it was not her husband Kevin but a total stranger that assaulted her went on to testify against Gerald in court, that her husband was the first to attack her before Gerald had his way with her.
I know what Kevin did, and I don't know what Parker did. I don't know what he did. I didn't see him, so how do you know which one killed Chantel? I think it's both of them, what they did, killed Chantel.
After only 2 hours of deliberation, Gerald was convicted on 6 counts of first-degree murder, of which included Chantel Green, Diana's baby, involving special circumstances that made him eligible for the death penalty. During the sentencing period, Gerald owned up to his deeds, saying, "If my life is what it takes for them to feel that their family members have been vindicated, then that is what I believe should be done. My life should be taken away from me." And on November 12, 1998, the jury recommended that Gerald be put to death, and he was sent to San Quentin State Prison to await death by lethal injection, which was accepted in 1999. Diana Green, who at this point has lost most of her hearing, most of her sense of smell, and often has trouble writing or articulating a thought, divorced Kevin and stayed with her mother for a while in Southern California. She is now remarried and uses her maiden name, Dielo. Her ex-husband Kevin, at his release, was awarded $620,000 as compensation for his wrongful conviction by the then California Governor Gray Davis. Upon his release, one of Kevin's initial actions entailed visiting the grave of his unborn daughter, where he reassured her that he was not responsible for her death. Additionally, Kevin pursued a legal course of action by filing a countersuit against Diana, seeking the dismissal of the wrongful death judgment. Ultimately, the two parties reached a settlement agreement outside the confines of the courthouse, the specifics of which were undisclosed. Subsequently, Kevin decided to relocate to Missouri to be in closer proximity to his family. He has since remarried and actively dedicates time to nurturing his relationship with Desiree, his 16-year-old daughter from his previous marriage to his high school sweetheart. Kevin supplements his income by engaging in part-time employment, harboring no ill will towards his ex-wife, a sentiment he made evident when addressing the local press outside the Santa Ana courthouse shortly after the wrongful death lawsuit settlement. He emphatically described her as a victim of the same flawed system that impacted him. In the light of things, Gerald Parker presently finds himself imprisoned at San Quentin State Prison, awaiting his execution. Back in 2017, his legal team made a heartfelt plea to invalidate his death sentence and secure a fresh trial. They contended that Gerald's mental state during the time of the gruesome murders was severely disturbed due to a tumultuous childhood plagued by bullying, as well as substance abuse. Despite the impassioned appeal, it was ultimately dismissed, striking a blow to Gerald's hopes for clemency. Diana Green's case is a sad reality of the extent abuse can stabilize one's life. What do you think about Gerald's actions? How do you view the challenges faced by Diana Green, now Diallo, and Kevin Green in their rocky marriage? On a chilly December day in 2014, a hiker stumbled upon a horrifying sight in the woods near Newport, Washington. Human remains, hidden deep within the woods, Newport. The investigation that followed would stretch for years, employing various techniques and encountering numerous dead ends. Yet, one crucial question remained. Who was this individual? And what led him to his fate? In the winter of 2014, on a crisp December day, December 2nd to be exact, a hiker was exploring a wooded area just south of the small town of Newport, Washington. This peaceful spot, nestled off the busy Highway 2, was known for its dense trees and abundance of nature. As the hiker ventured deeper, he stumbled upon a discovery that would send shivers down his spine. Human remains. Startled and unsure what to do, the hiker immediately contacted the local authorities. The Pend Oreille County Sheriff's Office swiftly responded to the scene, treating the situation with the utmost seriousness. Scattered around the remains, investigators found several items that might offer clues about the individual's identity. These included a single size 13 black boot, bearing the brand name Brahma. Beside it lay a red and navy striped beanie, likely worn for warmth. Clothing included pants with a 48-inch waist and 30-inch inseam, suggesting a larger build. A XXL plaid button-up shirt bearing the Faded Glory brand and a red zip-up hooded jacket of fleece material further completed the picture. A final detail, a pair of gold-rimmed eyeglasses, hinted at the possibility that this individual relied on corrective lenses. After combing through the surrounding area, they found no signs of foul play. Interestingly, the location of the discovery held a particular significance. The area situated close to railroad tracks was known to be a frequented spot for homeless individuals. This detail, coupled with the condition of the remains, led investigators to a possible explanation. They suspected that the deceased might have been someone who didn't have a permanent home, someone who had found themselves in this specific location. Hoping to shed light on the deceased's identity, the Pend Oreille County Sheriff's Office embarked on a search, canvassing several local homeless shelters in the region. They presented the details of the discovered items, hoping someone might recognize the clothing, glasses, or any other detail that could lead them to a name and a story. But they found nothing. December 2014 saw not only the discovery of the remains, but also the beginning of the investigation into their identity. An autopsy was performed by the Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office. However, due to the advanced stage of decomposition, the skeletal remains required further examination by a specialist. Therefore, they were sent to the King County Medical Examiner's office, where they landed in the capable hands of the late Dr. Kathy Taylor, the Washington State forensic anthropologist. Dr. Taylor carefully examined the remains and made a crucial determination. They belonged to a middle-aged Caucasian male. In addition to this, Dr. Taylor observed evidence suggesting the individual likely suffered from significant degenerative disease or arthritis, a condition that would have significantly impacted his ability to walk. This crucial detail, along with the discovery location near the railroad tracks frequented by transient individuals, began to paint a clearer picture of the life and circumstances surrounding the deceased. In the ongoing effort to identify the deceased, investigators turned to the Washington State Patrol's Missing and Unidentified Persons Unit, MUPU or MUPU. They provided MUPU with dental information recovered from the remains. This valuable information was then uploaded to a crucial national database, the FBI's National Crime Information Center, or NCIC. NCIC acts as a digital hub that tracks crimes and missing persons across the country. It allows law enforcement agencies from various jurisdictions to access and compare details from their own missing persons cases against the newly uploaded information. Through this collaborative effort, investigators hope to find a dental match in the NCIC database that would potentially lead them to the missing person record of someone who shared the same dental characteristics. Unfortunately, the search in the NCIC database yielded no results. However, the investigation continued. In May of 2015, a new avenue emerged. The remains were sent to the University of North Texas Health Science Center, a renowned institute with expertise in DNA analysis. There, scientists extracted DNA from the remains. This was a crucial step in unlocking the individual's genetic identity. The extracted DNA profile was then uploaded to a powerful tool, the FBI's Combined DNA Index System, or CODES. CODES acts as a national DNA database, functioning like a vast digital library of genetic information. It stores DNA profiles from three main sources: missing persons, convicted offenders, and arrestees. By comparing the newly uploaded DNA profile of the deceased against the profile stored in CODES, investigators hope to find a match. June 2015 saw the case take another crucial step towards resolution. The investigators entered all of the available information about the deceased individual into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, also known as NamUs. This comprehensive federal database, funded by the National Institute of Justice, acts as a centralized repository for cases involving missing, unidentified, and unclaimed persons across the United States. By entering the case information into NamUs, investigators hope to broaden their search and potentially find a match that would finally give the deceased a name and bring closure to their loved ones. The investigators were stuck. They had tried everything they could think of to identify the remains, but they were still at a dead end. So they decided to try something new: facial reconstruction. In December 2016, forensic artist Natalie Murray stepped in. She examined photographs and measurements of the remains. Based on this information and her expertise in facial morphology, Murray created a drawing depicting what the individual might have looked like in life. This facial reconstruction was not a photograph, but rather an artist's interpretation based on scientific knowledge and available data. The purpose of the drawing was to spark recognition. Investigators hoped that by seeing the reconstruction, someone might recognize a resemblance to a missing loved one and come forward with crucial information that could finally identify the individual. In February of 2017, another skilled artist, Carl Koppelman, also lent his expertise to the case by creating an additional facial reconstruction on behalf of the Pend Oreille County Coroner's Office. Unfortunately, even with these two different reconstructions, no one came forward with any leads. The search for the identity of the remains continued. From 2015 to 2023, the Pend Oreille County Coroner's Office, alongside the Pend Oreille County Sheriff's Office and Dr. Gary Bell, a forensic odontologist, tirelessly worked to identify the deceased individual. During this time, they examined various leads and potential matches. One key approach involved comparing dental records of the deceased with those of reported missing persons. Dr. Bell played a crucial role in this process. He carefully analyzed the dental characteristics of the remains and compared them to available dental records in relevant databases. Additionally, investigators from the Pend Oreille County Sheriff's Office thoroughly examined the circumstances surrounding the discovery of the remains, searching for any details that might help narrow down the search. Through this comparison, they were able to rule out several missing persons from the investigation. A glimmer of hope emerged in September of 2022. The Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office reached out to the Pend Oreille County Coroner's Office, proposing a collaborative effort with Othrem, a company specializing in advanced DNA analysis. This collaboration offered a new avenue for investigation, specifically through the use of investigative genetic genealogy. Investigative genetic genealogy involves analyzing the DNA of unidentified remains and comparing it to the DNA profiles stored in public genealogical databases. By identifying genetic matches, investigators can potentially trace the deceased's family lineage and narrow down the search for their identity. Recognizing the potential of this approach, the Pend Oreille County Coroner's Office readily agreed to collaborate. In October 2022, the skeletal remains were carefully transported to Othrem's laboratory for further testing. Othrem's specialized expertise focused on extracting a DNA profile from the remains that would be suitable for uploading to these crucial genealogical databases. This marked a significant step forward. In January 2023, a breakthrough arrived. Othrem announced positive news. They had successfully extracted a usable DNA sample from the remains, paving the way for further investigation. This extracted DNA was then subjected to a specialized process called forensic-grade genome sequencing. The advanced technique allowed Othrem to build a comprehensive DNA profile for the unknown man. With this crucial information in hand, Othrem's in-house genealogy team sprang into action. They embarked on a crucial phase of the investigation, which involved forensic genetic genealogy research. In this specialized approach, they compared the man's DNA profile to profiles stored in public genealogical databases. By identifying potential genetic matches, investigators could then begin to trace the individual's family lineage and potentially narrow down the search for their identity. The Othrem genealogists weren't alone in this endeavor. They collaborated closely with Nicole Hamada, a death investigator from the Spokane County Medical Examiner's Office. Investigators' tireless efforts, coupled with Othrem's advanced technology, yielded promising results. They identified a potential relative who could provide a DNA reference sample for comparison. This vital piece of evidence held the key to unlocking the individual's identity. Following up on this crucial lead, investigators swiftly conducted the necessary DNA reference test. The results, finalized on July 28, 2023, brought a wave of relief and closure. After years of relentless investigation, the remains were finally identified. They belonged to a man named Randall Reed Priborsky. This long-awaited answer brought a sense of peace and allowed investigators to conclude their search. With the name and a starting point, investigators embarked on a new phase of the investigation, uncovering the life of Randall Reed Priborsky. They searched for any available information, hoping to piece together his story. However, their efforts yielded limited results. The investigators learned that Randall was born on January 23, 1961, in Sioux City, Iowa, and his family described him as someone who enjoyed reading. They also discovered that he had last been in contact with his family in 2003. This detail offered a potential timeline, suggesting that he may have distanced himself from his family at some point. However, a crucial piece of information emerged. Authorities determined that Randall was last seen in Old Town, Idaho in 2008. This placed him less than a mile away from the location where his remains were found about 6 years later. The circumstances surrounding his disappearance from Old Town, Idaho, however, remained shrouded in mystery. This gap in his timeline, coupled with the lack of information about his life from 2003 onwards, left investigators with many unanswered questions. Despite these limitations, investigators remained hopeful that new information might surface in the future. They released Randall's story and details surrounding his case to the public, hoping that someone might come forward with information about his life or the circumstances surrounding his disappearance. Perhaps with time and the help of the public, the full picture of Randall Reed Priborsky's life and final days could be brought to light.